Hey everybody, and welcome to another live stream of the Ask a Cycling Coach podcast. Thanks for joining us on YouTube or Facebook. This is where you can interact with us live during the Facebook. Send in the questions or comments that you have on whatever situations that you see or whatever questions you may have about training. You can send those in. You should let your friends know about this. Share it out. Let other people know that we're talking about training and talking about getting faster. We'd appreciate that. And with that, we've got a lot to talk about, so we should kick off the proper podcast. Welcome to the podcast that's dedicated to making you a faster cyclist, the Ask a Cycling Coach podcast presented by TrainerRoad. I'm Coach Jonathan Lee with our head coach, Chad Timmerman.
Hi, everybody.
Our CEO, Nate Pearson.
Hello.
We are going to answer more of your cycling and triathlon-related questions today. You can submit them at trainerroad.com/podcast. We will read all of those questions every week, and then we put together a list of questions that we feel is educational and informative and entertaining as well, and we'll put that together and answer that every week. For those that are not, that don't know this, you can join us live also while we record this on our Facebook page or on our YouTube page. You can find us just by searching TrainerRoad, and we live stream, so you can ask questions and everything else live while we do this as well. With that, something else to mention is that our Facebook podcast group. There's a lot of folks in there now. We're getting well into the thousands. It's building quickly, and lots of questions are asked there. If you have questions that aren't necessarily if it's like a customer support issue or a problem you might be having or a question you might have around that, you can always just contact our support agents because they're almost always available and they're trained to handle those sort of situations quickly. But if you have, things that you're doing for training that you wanted to share or ask, that sort of a thing, then put them on there. There are a ton of other like-minded folks like the rest of us on there. They can help answer those. I guess Reddit too, right?
Yep.
If you're not a Facebook person.
There's a Reddit. So that's a community. We don't run that one, but we're involved in it. And the admin of that Reddit forum, they put or the moderator, there's a question there like what features you want to see in TrainerRoad, and I'm trying to respond to every single feature request that people put in there. There's some smart people. I know some of them I'm like, they've hit so close to home
on what we're
that I can't
it's hard to respond.
Yeah, they're like 60% of the way there.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say the 100% what we're going to do because
of course
I think what we're going to do is unique, and it could be a competitive advantage. So I just kind of wink at them. If I wink at you on that forum, it's because you're really smart.
Onto something.
Yeah, you're really smart. The other thing I want to mention is, so we're talking about 3 different communities, but there is the TrainerRoad beta group on Facebook. And I love this one. We're putting in all the new stuff in there and getting feedback. Mm-hmm. And I just put a question in there about syncing favorites. So right now this is a definite problem that we have is you can't go on the website, mark some favorites down, and sync to the app. You got to do it in the app, and then if you reinstall it, it only stays on the app, which is frustrating. So we ask the question of, if we do favorites, we want to sync through all the apps, but do you want to create folders or not? We got I think there's 50, 60 comments on it. And this is the great part about this is that everyone's kind of like, well, don't do folders, do tags. And if you do tags, then you could have things organized multiple ways.
Yeah.
Someone explained it as a difference between Gmail and Outlook. Outlook's all about folders. Gmail is about tags.
Yeah.
Our design team is going to have to make it so that you can tag things and still make it easy to find out. But I think based on the feedback, that's the way we're going to go try to approach it now is based on tags. So that's an example. If you want to push us forward, be in that group and respond.
Yeah, and you get early access to certain features. You can test things out for us. We'll make you a guinea pig for us. So.
Thank you.
The other thing that we wanted to mention, for those that listen to the podcast pretty regularly, we're working toward a 40K TT time trial.
We are?
Where all 3 of us.
Shoot.
Yes.
I thought that happened already.
Well, it's supposed to. Where all 3 of us are going to square off, and it's going to be a state championship for Nevada. I'm just going to cover a quick little fact with this because lots of people ask the state championship, that's your district championship, right? Because we usually belong to the district, which is Northern California, Northern Nevada in our region. But this is just going to be a Northern Nevada state championship, but that doesn't mean that if you aren't from Nevada, you can't race it. Of course you can. So you can come and race that. It's the reason why you would want to is because it's a pan-flat course in Loyalton, California. Well, it's pretty darn pan-flat.
Yeah, very flat. And you get it's also the elevation that's really good.
Yeah, it's the perfect mix, right? It's right around 5,000 feet. So that's like that tipping point where you start to see performance drop too much when you go higher than that. Mm-hmm. But then if you go lower than that, then you see wind resist, or I should say the density of the air affecting you.
Yep, so you can go fast. It's a good way to get a PR on the course. Plus, we'll be there. We're going to have at least 10 TrainerRoad employees because they are volunteering.
Yes.
So we're paying for them to go out there. And I just want listeners to beat us. That makes me happy.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
When I see people
not the worst thing.
I use TrainerRoad and then they smoke us.
Yeah. So when you go, so if you join our Facebook podcast group, if you just look for the Ask a Cycling Coach podcast group, you'll find it on there. If you look that up, then you'll see we'll have this posted up, a registration link. Just shortly after we record this podcast, you'll see a registration link up there for you. So you can click on that and register.
Wait, when is it?
Oh yeah, we should say that, right? And actually one thing I did want to mention with this too is that the course, I believe, is going to be surveyed at 40K. So since it's going to be surveyed at 40K, like you said, in terms of setting a PR, this is definitely a good opportunity to set, like or a legit one, like where you can say, yes, this was 40K.
And no cars too.
Yep.
Yeah. If you do it with a course with cars going in your same direction,
it's a huge benefit.
Or a point to point with cars going in your direction, you're taking off many minutes.
Yes.
Depending on the amount of cars.
Yep. So this is going to be on June 30th, and that's going to be at 8 a.m. So I think that they say 8 a.m. I think registration and everything else, if you want to do that, if you're registering late or picking up a number.
No, I don't think you can do race day. Typically, you can't do race day registration.
Right. So I think that if you're picking up your number and stuff, I heard they'll be there, I think, at around 6:30 or 7. So.
June 30th, 2018.
Yes, this year.
Yeah. Well,
please. Not next year.
People will be listening to this a year from now and be like, what?
Decades from now.
Yeah. Decades. Yes.
100 years.
Something that we teased last week that we should probably go into more detail on now is a dirty. So we talked about how Jeff Kabush got third place in Dirty Kanza, and we analyzed his performance and what he did in order to get there. It's some pretty interesting stuff, and I've learned once again that I do things wrong compared to the pros a lot of the time. You know what I mean? Yeah, believe it or not, right? Some interesting stuff with this. So I'm sure pretty much everybody knows, but if you don't know Dirty Kanza, 200-mile mixed surface race, mostly gravel, and it's got a lot of really sharp flint rock in that area, and it's just nonstop rolling hills. You'd think you'd be pan flat if it's Kansas, but it's just rolling hills nonstop. I think that you get somewhere around 8,000 or 9,000 feet of climbing after 200 miles. So I know that's, somebody scoffing at that climbs a ton in a short amount, but the point is it's not flat. It has usually 4 aid stations or 4 stops within that, so you just break it up around 50-mile marks, and it's hotly contested, like really fast riders. So Kabush got third at this one, and there were a lot of tactics and a lot of tricky stuff, but some interesting things, at least what stood out to me most. And you can go onto our blog, that's blog.trainerroad.com, and you can see the whole report that we have there. You can actually join me later this afternoon if you're in the Facebook podcast group, and I'm going to be recording like a screen share video, and I'll do it live with all of you so then we can make it more interesting. And that'll be up later on our YouTube channel.
You're going to look at his data?
Yep, we're going to go over everything, and I'm going to walk you through basically the analysis of how we look at that ride.
Cool.
But some interesting stuff for nutrition, because that's huge on such a long day. I think Jeff did 11 and a half hours roughly, or somewhere around 11 hours. So that's a long day, right?
It is.
He was going for 250 grams of carbohydrate and just over about 1,000 calories every 2.5 hours roughly. So or I should say 2.5 hours. Nate, I assume you would eat a whole lot more.
No, this is
about spot on for you.
Yeah, so you do the reverse math. And this is right around the 400 calories or 100 grams of carbs per hour. Mm-hmm. And that's about the maximum it can absorb. Yep. Right, Chad?
Yeah. If you do it between 2 different types of sugar. It can't just be glucose, can't just be fructose. So they find it's like 60 grams of glucose and the remainder in fructose.
Or 60 to 70 glucose, 30 fructose, somewhere around there. Yeah. And I've actually, because of that, what I learned from you, Chad, I looked it up and the kind of things that I'm eating. And I did the math, and I was naturally eating like the right mix.
Proper split?
Yep, between Scratch and the Honey Stinger products, because the Honey Stinger products are like 1-to-1 glucose to fructose. Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
But yeah, right around that 400 grams. Chad and I, we don't have any science to back this up, but I theorize that, like, I think that major athletes can absorb more than that, like Michael Phelps. See how many calories he was eating?
Yeah.
He's got to be able to absorb more than 1,000 or 100 grams of carbs every hour. But that's a side note. I think the 100 is like a good rule of thumb, and maybe you can go more, but I doubt it's just like we're all going
fast.
Yeah, exactly. Grams. Everyone's 100, and more than that, it just goes to fat or it leaks.
Yeah, what he ate in order to get to that, so he would have about 2.5 servings of GU Roctane in his reservoir. He did race with a Camelback, and then he actually froze his Camelback reservoirs the night before, and he would have those frozen, and then the folks from GU and Camelback were at the aid stations ready for that. So at the aid stations, he would just put on a new pack with a frozen reservoir on there. And it wasn't frozen by that time. It was, probably slushy and
but cold anyway, and it's a pretty hot day, yeah?
Oh, super hot.
Yeah. GU Roctane is a gel, so we put gels in
they have a Roctane drink as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's like a carbohydrate drink,
okay,
right?
Cool.
Yeah, so he had GU Roctane in his reservoir. That was 2.5 servings. Then 2 bottles of GU Hydration Mix on his bike. Then 2 packages of GU Chews and 2 packages of GU Gels every 2.5 to 3 hours. So that's what he brought in on that. Doesn't actually seem like a lot of food if you think of it
not
in
stretched
that
out
respect.
over 2.5 hours,
but, yeah, but when you're doing that sort of thing, and if you look at it, the numbers all add up. He's got, when you look at that, the calories and everything else that come from it, and the carbs and the sugar and everything else, it all checks out. So the smart stuff.
So we talked about this after Lost and Found, actually, and this shows like he's eating just almost pure carbs, pure sugar, right? Mm-hmm. And after, what happens to a lot of people is after many hours of that sweet stuff, you want like something salty or fat, but if you look at this, it just makes it harder. Like, you still want the 100 grams of carbs, but if you're going to start eating other stuff like bacon or something that they put on that would taste really good, it's just harder to digest that food, and you're getting more calories, and you have more likely to get stomach upset.
Craving isn't necessarily the best thing to follow, right?
For speed, right? But there's that balance, right? Your stomach can get upset too with all the sweets, or you stop eating, and it's even worse. But this just shows like he is disciplined. He can eat sugar for 11 hours.
Yes, and he's also extremely well trained, right? I mean, Jeff's one of the most prolific mountain bikers, of this generation.
How many national championships?
Oh gosh,
22?
I think it's somewhere around 20 something when you look at it all. Because I think he's got like 15 mountain bike, and I don't know, it's
15
crazy.
Canadian.
Yeah, 15 Canadian, and then it's amazing.
A lot. But anyways, it just shows like, right? I really want them to create like a super salty chew or like gel that I can just have every like 5th time. Where it's doesn't taste sweet. I don't know how they could do that, but
savory flavors.
Something like that. But it's hard though, because you want the sugar in it. So you're gonna have to, I don't know what, I'm sure people have, I'm sure they've tried to do this before, right?
I like zingy, something with like a zingy flavor with a bit of saltiness to it helps with that. And those salted watermelon Cliff Blocks, they get close enough so that it kind of satisfies that craving for me. It's and they definitely are on the sweet side still, right? But they're close enough. I feel like that it kind of curbs that.
Yeah, changing flavors helps.
Yeah, it really does.
Even if it's all sweet, just different flavors.
Yeah, you can only eat the same thing for so long before you just won't do it anymore.
Another thing that I thought was super interesting. So he flatted, and he plugged his tire, and then got back. Wait,
what does that mean? Plug your tire?
Yeah, so with tubeless tires, when you flat, you have sealant in there, but sometimes that sealant can't seal a hole, especially when it's like from a large flint rock that slices your tire, and it's like a big hole, right? So a lot of the time, the tire will just fillet open, and sealant won't be able to fill that in. So in those cases, you actually want to pack something into that hole, and that's what a tire plug is. It's basically like it's a section of little rope that's very rubbery, and it's got some sticky compound on it. And what you do is you actually, to plug a tire, it has like a little needle that you thread that little tire plug, or they call them sides of bacon, because they kind of look like a little bacon piece. And you just plug that into the hole in your tire all the way in, then you pull out that little needle that helped you plug it in, and it plugs the tire up. So he had to do that once, and that took him about a minute, which was pretty quick for a lot of people plugging a tire. And then kept going, and then it started to work its way loose, and then he lost the tire plug. It came out, so it wasn't a full, complete plug. So then he had to stop again and put it back in. But the interesting part to me, and then he actually ended up later on at an aid station, he changed that wheel, which actually ended up leading to him missing that split. But I still think it was the smart choice to change out the wheel, right? Because
probably,
even if it's plugged, and you can make a plugged tire. I've seen somebody riding on a plugged tire for over a year, right? They can hold, but is it really worth risking on a big day like that? So it's probably smart of him to change the wheel. But the interesting thing is how he chased back. like a lot of us, like when we get distance off a group or have a mechanical or something like this, we think, oh man, I'm away from the group. I'm just going to ride as hard as I possibly can until I can catch that group, right? And then once I catch that group, I can rest. He did not do that though. He was distanced from that group, and instead what he did is he rode right around that sweet spot threshold range, at least for this race. You know, it was a lower intensity effort for the whole day. The people at the front of the pack, they're fast and they would, you know, gas it at certain moments, but they were smart enough. All those riders know well enough to not push way hard, right? So while they were pushing pretty quick to try to get rid of Jeff in that moment, he just settled in right around his threshold, and every once in a while he'd tip up into VO2, every once in a while down to a sweet spot. But he just knew that if he stuck with that, it should be enough, and he ended up catching on.
Kept a cool head, and he's drawing on literal years and years and years of experience.
Yeah.
And you see the same thing with the Pro Tour or the Grand Tour riders. They do the same thing. They just work their way gradually back through the convoy. Sometimes they have teammates to support them, sometimes they don't, but they don't do it all at once. It's not a frantic endeavor.
Yeah.
They have cars too.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, the convoy.
Yeah. I mean, it's really interesting to see because it's backwards, I think, from a lot of our mentality. We panic and then we sprint, you know.
Yeah, it's an unnerving situation. It's hard not to.
Yeah.
So if you guys were in the break and Jeff Kabush changed his wheel and is trying to come back, would you try to organize that break to be like...
For sure.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Let's move.
And the thing is, this is gravel, so there's no rules, right, at Kanza. There's no, there's no gentleman's rules of the road that you see with road. And
mechanicals, everyone doesn't stop. If one guy gets a flat, everyone just go, okay, I'm going to slow down and wait for him to come back.
I don't know why that happens anywhere, but
exactly. Yeah. So no, absolutely. That's the time to put the nails down. And something interesting about this too is that when they would come out of aid stations, like aid stations were a race. Guys weren't skipping the aid stations. They, guys and gals, they knew that they needed to use those, but they get to those aid stations, they had people there to help them. And at least at the pointy end of this, and it was a fast, quick, organized endeavor. And then when they got out of the aid stations, if you look, the power was high out of aid stations relative to the rest of the effort because they were trying to really put the screws to people in times where maybe they need to be adjusting something else. And then, if you have 4 of those aid stations, you know that if you can just dose them with a bit of excess on coming out of each one, that it may be enough to split some folks off.
Sure, I'm slow at aid stations.
Sounds like it worked too.
Yeah, and we saw that at Lost and Found too. It's the guys were just like jamming it out of those aid stations.
And they actually did that to Kabush,
Yeah, and actually that's what happened when he got that flat. He chased on, and it was a hard chase this time to get back on. And as soon as he grabbed that wheel, Josh Berry and Ted King, boom, took off the front, and he was like, I don't have what it takes to go with that right now. They ended up causing a separation later, and it was really cool. You'll get to see it when you look at this post. Like, we analyzed the heads-up battle that he had at the end of this whole thing, which, I mean, we're talking like an absolute, like a serious race, right? This guy burned 9,500 calories, right? Like a huge amount. And at the end of this whole thing, he averages 271 normalized power for over 11 hours, and ridiculous. Then he does a 1,500-watt sprint at the end, too, to end up getting third.
How do you guys make a fast aid station stop? Something like this?
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing is when you come into it, you have to be prepared. Like, I find that if I come into an aid station and I need to have things changed out, I have, and this is something that'll help you on the ride anyway, I don't just pack, like, if people are going to be packing different nutrition, I don't pack it in different pockets. I pack it all in one pocket, and then I have my empties in another. That way I can know where's where, what's where, and I know exactly what I need. So then I can call it out and get through quickly. Honestly, the fastest way to do an aid station, though, is to make sure that you have people there. If you can't have people there to help you, then slow to go fast, sort of a theory. Like, you can really screw things up if you panic, drop bottles, do that sort of thing.
I was thinking a few other things. I would open the bottle before I get there.
Yeah.
And then also, there's usually like people there that will, if you can give them your bottles, if they're not doing hand-ups, they'll fill them up for you.
Good time for you to rest.
Yeah, exactly. So you just give them the bottles and they'll fill it up, and then you take it back and you can go.
Yeah, call out whatever you need before you get to the aid station.
Yep. And I know you guys are different than this, but I open all my nutrition before I start the race so that I don't have to deal with any opening packages or anything like that.
Other than goos, I do the same.
Yeah, goos would be. But even with those, triathletes, they'll put
top back.
Well, no, they put multiple goos in a flask.
Oh, yeah.
So you can put like 6 goos in one flask. It's harder to dose it, but it just makes it so much easier to open it. And you don't have one little flask.
Yeah, it'd be easier.
Yeah.
Then you can make like a 7-Eleven Slurpee cocktail of all of the gels that you plan to use.
Yeah, different flavors. Yeah.
So is it rolling up to all the aid stations, I find myself chanting the things that I need. So like the last mile or two, just because it's on my mind and I want to make it somewhat quick.
Yeah.
I just know, it's Coke, chips, bottle, trash, or something. But either way, I find myself saying those same words over and over, rolling into the aid station. So I'm very clear on what I have to do. It's not something I actually give much thought to. It just kind of takes shape over the miles leading into the aid station.
2 more questions that I have before we move on. Carson City, you guys still wearing backpacks?
Mm-hmm. We're doing them. Let's talk about Carson City, actually. Yeah,
right now.
Let's do that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I have more questions about tire plugs.
Okay.
Because I think you have a great way to do it, and we found out another new tire plug product that I think we should also talk about. So
for sure.
Yeah. So Carson City Off Road, it's coming up. I pre-rode the majority of the course on Saturday, 43 of the 52 miles. So if those people that don't know, Epic Rides is an endurance mountain bike series in the United States, and it's the most popular mountain bike series in the United States. They make these awesome courses. They usually have like a 50-ish mile variant, a 35-ish, and then a 15-ish mile variant. The pros do the 50. Amateurs can do any of the 3, and then the pros also do a fat tire crit beforehand. So they'll be doing that on Friday. Us average Joes, we race on Saturday and Jans, and then on Sunday the pros race the 50. So this one's in our backyard in Carson City. It's really close to where we're from, but it climbs up to Tahoe. We're looking at like 52 miles and about 6,500 feet of climbing, I figure, after the pre-ride that I did.
Legit.
Yeah, and the tricky thing is it's more or less one big up and one big down. And you get up almost to 9,000 feet, so we're getting close to 3,000 meters. It's not quite. But it's high elevation stuff, and it doesn't actually get tricky in terms of technicality until you get up to like that final 1,000 feet or so, and then it gets some ledgy, some technical stuff. So nice and clever.
Great.
On their end. It's going to be a ton of fun. We're looking forward to it. We did it last year. I did the 50. You guys did the 35 last year, I think. So
different course, but yeah.
Very different course, right? It's going to be a ton of fun. Some stuff though. Let's talk about this. We're using hydration packs, all of us, right?
Yeah, and that is because, for me at least, one, I think it's still going to feel hot, even though like it's going to be 20 degrees cooler than it was like yesterday.
And we progressively climb higher. We start at like 7 a.m. or so, 7:30. And I think it's going to be about 53 degrees, it says, in the morning then.
Start, okay.
So chilly. And then, right after that, we keep climbing up toward 9,000 feet. We'll probably be up there within a few hours, or within a couple hours, maybe 3 hours. So if that's the case, it's still going to be cold up there.
Yeah. So it's extra weight, but I think I can skip some aid stations then. Mm-hmm. And I found that if I don't drink enough, especially last year there, my performance reduces.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of times when you're mountain biking, it's much harder to drink because you're holding on to bars for your life.
It's a big process. You have to get the bottle, you have to take the drink, and then you have to put the bottle back. And that may sound like no big deal, but when you're bouncing around trying to do any one of those things is difficult.
Yeah.
It takes effort every time to reach down. Yeah. But when you have a hydration pack, it's super easy.
Yeah. Granted, this course is a lot of Jeep trail and fire road versus, technical single track. It has its technical sections for sure, but it's a lot of that. So sure, you could say it's easier to drink, but man, it's really easy to drink from a hydration
And there's
pack.
also the dirty bottles issue. I mean, getting a mouthful of dirt because that's what your bottle is coated in.
Yeah.
It's not pleasant.
Yeah.
So what's like the estimated finish time so people get more context?
I figure that we'll probably be somewhere around 4.5 hours.
So for you, 4.5?
Yeah.
So for us, probably 5.5?
Yeah, so he'll probably be closer to 4. We'll be closer to 5. That's my guess.
Okay, yeah.
Just for people who are new to the podcast, Jonathan's an extremely good mountain biker, extremely good technical skills. Chad and I have gotten a lot better. I think we're probably around even now for technical skills. I'd say I've gone up. Are you saying that I'm better or you're better?
I'm still better.
Yeah.
I think we've risen at the same rate, but I started at a higher place.
Yeah, I think Chad's pretty solid.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, well, we shall see.
We shall see. And then on packs, everybody always asks this, which packs we're going to use. So we're using the USWE. It's USWE packs. They're super comfortable.
Harness style.
Yeah, they're like a harness style. And that's the thing. I was like, I don't know if you guys remember before we got packs, but I was like the most anti-pack person. Like I hated riding with packs. Would never do it. Because I hated whenever I was doing like a technical thing, like a little ledge drop or something, my bag was like, oh, you didn't go over the bars? Here you go. I'm going to hit you in the back of the head to make sure that happens, But this bag stays put really well, and you completely forget about it. So that's the one we're using. I'm carrying 2 CO2s. I'm carrying a little nozzle. I'm carrying a multi-tool, a tire lever, and then I'm also carrying a pump with me.
Oh, that all sounds just right.
That's what you're running
Same thing, yep.
I'm doing the hand pump because if I've gotten to a point where tire plugs won't fix a thing, or they have, and I'm out of CO2s, I do not want to be stuck up there and have to take a ride home or ride down in something. So I would much rather just have that hand pump and be able to limp through that way. And it's really light. I just stash it next to my reservoir. And then tire plugs, though. So you can get a couple different variations, and a lot of them are kind of involved. Keegan Swenson actually was the first person that showed us this, and I think it's a really good idea. So he rides for the Stands Pivot team, and he's actually he won the last Epic Rides race in the pro category. So I'd say he's right.
He's
up there.
Legit.
Yeah, he's with the favorite. He and Howard Grotz are probably the favorite. So he actually, Genuine Innovations is a company that makes one that is in like a little metal sleeve, and we had those ones, but they're heavy, and then it's also a pain because you have to take it apart and then put the bacon on and put it in. And when your tire's leaking like that, you're
Every
really
second
losing.
counts.
Yeah. So
it's good if you need to like plug 25 tires on one.
Exactly.
Right? Like not.
Sure.
It seems like it should be in the follow car or something.
Right. But instead, what you can do is you actually just have what looks like a jumbo thumbtack. But that thumbtack has like an eye in the needle, so it has a little hole in the end of it. And then what you do is you take that jumbo thumbtack, and I'm going to be running 2 of them. So I have 2 of them, and then you already put the piece of bacon on there before you start the ride. And then on the plug. Yeah, I should say.
So the plug.
Yeah.
It's not really bacon.
Yeah.
It just looks like bacon.
Yeah. And then you tape those to the handlebars.
So then if you have a flat, all you have to do is just rip it off your handlebar, stick it in, pull it out, and you're ready to go.
Exactly right.
Minimal air loss, so maybe you don't even have to pump it up at all.
Exactly right. Just don't point them upward on your handlebar, pokey little fellas.
Yeah. So I have them. I have like the specialized SWAT storage. So I have a little thing I can open on my bike, and I have one sitting in there.
Cool.
But you could also, just in a saddlebag, you could put 1 or 2 in there. And how long, how much time does that take?
Yeah, not long.
Depending on how aggressively you tape it.
Yeah.
It could be don't tape it too aggressively.
Yeah. The reason I bring this up is because this course, I swear, you could probably run a latex tube without a tire and not get a flat for the majority of the course. It's like it's DG, but it's not sharp rock. You hardly ever come across sharp rock until one section. And I pride myself on not getting flats, and by that I mean like I'm a line picker, not just a smasher. And I ride pretty light on my bike, and I never even saw this rock, but there's a section with a lot of like random shattered rock around in the trees and stuff. And sure enough, one of those things got my tire.
So Genuine
2
Innovation
tires.
Makes these smaller ones too, right?
Yeah, so get those ones.
I think they look like a really small screwdriver in the picture.
Yeah.
And then the other product that you saw, this is like more of a training product, I view, but it's a tire plug with CO2 built in.
Oh, yeah, Dynaplug. Yeah, they make one that's a plug kit, and then it's got a CO2 nozzle. So then basically once you puncture it in and you push like that, it fills it up with air too, and then you pull it out. Really clever.
So that's if you didn't have any air in it, you wouldn't have to like do the second step of loading up with CO2. It was just all in one.
Super clever.
Yeah, right? Like it seems like...
Good job, Dynaplug.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
So we got those too. And
they apparently do the job really well too. Fix some really tough flats.
Yeah.
I don't think we've used it yet, right? I haven't gotten a flat recently.
Yeah.
Knock on wood. I just did it.
Yeah, I just did it. So I guess with that, the other thing that's left for us to discuss, well, actually, is there anything else you want to discuss strategy-wise?
No.
We're all riding our mountain bikes, obviously.
Yep.
I'm riding my Yeti SB100. You're riding Specialized Epic.
Yep.
Chad, you're riding your hardtail.
Canyon,
Yep. So cool. So, and then we're doing a live podcast from there. It's going to be, So it's going to be a ton of fun. This is going to be Saturday. After we race 50 miles, we're somehow going to muster the intelligence, awareness, and wherewithal to be able to host a podcast. So it's going to be tricky, but we'll get it done.
See through the beer goggles. See if I can form sentences.
Yeah. So we're going to be with Payson McElveen, the current national marathon or cross-country marathon champion. He's always a threat at Epic Rides races to win, and he's a consistent podium guy at this sort of racing. He's just as much a favorite as anybody else coming into this one. So Payson McElveen, he'll be there. He's a Red Bull athlete, rides for Trek and the Orange Seal Off-Road team. And then Sofia Gomez Villafane, she'll be there. She rides for the Stands Pivot team, presented by Maxis. And Sophia has been finishing on podiums and right around there too, so she's just as much a threat too. So it's going to be exciting stuff.
We're also going to be
4:30 on Saturday. we're actually opening for the headlining band.
We're the opener.
Yeah, exactly. Just pump everyone up.
Right after award ceremonies, it's us and then the opening band. So.
I want Jonathan to be like, "How y'all doing? I can't hear you." I hate when people do that so much. I like just cross my arms and don't say a thing. But the other thing, we just got like, I think 1,000 bottles in, and shirts and hats. So we have all this swag stuff, and we're going to have a little bag with us. So if you see us, come up to us and we'll give you bottle hat t-shirts.
People are cursing us for not making it available to buy right now on the internet.
But if you just see us, we'll give it to you.
Come find us at an event.
And then is this Facebook poll a joke, or are we actually doing that?
We did make this note.
I didn't even see it.
We're going to put a Facebook poll up in the Facebook podcast group. Chad was notorious for cramping last year.
Oh, yeah.
Had it beat, and then Lost and Found beat him hard with the cramps.
Yeah.
So
I'm back on track.
What's the question?
Cramping. What mile will Chad cramp? So we'll put down some options. We'll put them down in 10-mile increments for y'all, and then you can pick at which mile you think.
No, I think people should just like the mile without going over, like Price is Right.
Yeah, without going over.
Yeah, so we don't even need the poll. Just say it in the comment.
Yeah.
That way. And if you can do tenths of the mile too.
Yeah.
Because we'll know.
Nice. I like that. That makes it more exciting. So, Chad, I don't think you're going to cramp on this one.
I don't think I am either.
Nice. No, there we go.
I got everything dialed.
I'm saying mile 52 then.
We'll give the person a Fremont the TrainerRoad.
Yeah.
Whoever gets it best.
Yeah.
Okay. Or if you don't cramp.
Nobody gets anything.
No one gets anything, Chad.
There we are.
I just get the satisfaction of having done a race without cramping.
That's it, yeah. Actually, my guess is whenever you sit down off your bike and you're having your beer and your foot cramps or something.
That's after that. Doesn't count.
It doesn't count.
After doesn't count? Okay.
Okay, final things to mention before we get into some questions. We got some cool new features that are actually, so one's in our iOS app, and it should be live.
And Android app.
Yeah, and Android app, forgive me, yep. So that's going to be dynamic warm-up and cool-down. Do you want to explain that?
Yep.
Nate? Yeah.
So long time feature request, and I've been using it for a few workouts now, and I love it.
Yeah.
Basically, during your warm-up or cool-down sections, you can extend it 5, 10, 15 minutes. You can undo it, and it's just really handy because sometimes, on some days, you just want to spin like a little bit more, and it makes the workout feel easier. Or afterwards, some of the workouts, they have short cool downs, or sometimes people want to do just 30 minutes of spinning. So you can just add it, and you can actually add as much as you want. You just have to push 15 minutes more.
And it only happens during the first, earliest, easiest segment of the warm-up.
Yep.
So typically 50%.
Yep. So then on the cool down, so let's say you want to, some people do an intense workout, then they just want to spin for 30 minutes or 60 minutes. You can add that and then just raise the intensity to whatever target you want. That way you don't have to do another workout afterwards. I see that a lot. Someone will do a VO2 max workout and then 45 minutes or 30 minutes of like taku or something.
It's really common. Sure.
Yep.
So that's on iOS and Android. We're building it right now for desktop too. So desktop will be a couple weeks behind, and we will let you know when that comes out.
There we go. And then another feature for performance analytics. So for those that don't know, we have ride analysis features that are super cool. They're very distilled and just focused on the details that make you faster. So you can pull in your outdoor rides and analyze that on TrainerRoad.com. And we have a new feature so that, a lot of people have seen rides and it looks different than what they see on Strava, right? In terms of the x-axis. Do you want to explain how it's changing?
Yeah, so right now we all focus on x-axis being time-based. And that's because your body really doesn't know how many miles it is. It's a function of the power you put out and how much time.
Yep.
But there are situations where you might want to look at a distance. So now you pretty much have a toggle, so you can change the x-axis to be distance or time. With time, one thing can happen is if you stop, there could be this gap in there. And I think the gap it's really good to see that gap because if you so you've seen this on Strava too. Let's say you go for a 10-minute interval, and then you stop, and you go for a 10-minute interval. And if you're looking at distance, it'll look like you did 20 minutes all in a row, right?
Cheaters.
And you look back at it too, like a few months
you
later.
Forget.
You
then
forget,
you think,
right?
I did 40 minutes or something. I
exactly,
did 20 minutes. Yeah.
You're like, how did I do that? But if you have time, you can see that gap.
Yeah.
One thing, though, about time, too, is like the elevation profile doesn't look right because it makes all of the climbs look really elongated because it takes longer to go on the climb than on the descent.
So the climbs will look less steep, the descents will look more steep because you're covering, that same,
But then if you switch it to distance, that then changes. And sometimes you want to know, how fast did I go for these 5 miles or something like that, or how much power did I put out for these 5 miles, and that makes it really easy if the x-axis is distant. So there's a place for both. Cool. The default is still time, but now you can just click a button and see distance.
Handy stuff.
Yep.
Nice.
Then the last thing I'm going to mention is the a post that we put up on blog.trainerroad.com about the aero takeaways that we got back to time trialing when we did aerodynamic testing at the Velodrome with Aerosport. So that's we just put together a few takeaways that we feel like are easy gets for a lot of folks or interesting things that they may not have considered. And you can check that out. There's a video on YouTube with it, the whole thing. So
can I do my safety reminder?
Oh, yeah, we should do that. Yeah.
So my wife did a half marathon up at Squaw Valley, and on the way back on Highway 89, which is like a two-road 65-mile or two-lane 65-mile-per-hour with a small shoulder. A lot of cyclists use it because you're riding around Tahoe.
It was on Ironman Lake Tahoe?
Yep, it was. And we saw just afterwards, the cops were already, but a woman hit a cyclist and killed him.
Yeah.
Right? So we saw like the white sheet and all that. They didn't even have an ambulance yet, but they had the cop cars around and you see them smashed up.
Yeah.
My wife saw it. She started crying because, you can imagine like, the thinking that could be you. So I just want to say like there's a lot of great rides out there that are beautiful, but usually those beautiful rides too, there's some of them that are safe and some of them aren't safe. Yeah. And there's no ride that's worth it, right?
Yeah.
So like I just want to say like for us, there's a couple rides that we know, like going up, there's a Geiger grade here. I actually think that going up a very steep hill that's twisty is actually pretty safe because everyone's going like speed. 10, 15 miles per hour and everyone's paying attention, right? It's when you get those back roads where people are going really quick that you can be in a lot of trouble. Yeah,
we have a lot of cyclists listening to this, and we all know, like, I think it's a reality that we try to kind of push over our shoulder a bit, and forget about a lot of the time, but it certainly is. It's a dangerous thing that we're doing, and I think that it's always worth us revisiting and reconsidering the things that we're doing because, like you said, this is a fun hobby that we all love, but man, we got to stay safe with it.
I love that Garmin Varia thing because that's the radar that tells me when cars are coming, so I can. Because sometimes you ride close to the line because there's a bunch of dirt and gravel and rocks. Yeah. But when you know a car's coming, you can go over an extra 2 feet, right? And you ride in that for a second, and maybe you get a flat, but oh well. The also nice thing is that you get there's a light on the back, and I think not enough cyclists, even in the daytime, could use a light.
I think we should all have one.
Right? Like, I think it's not considered cool, but why not just have one? They're cheap, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
The other thing is riding in groups. I feel like groups are more.
It's much safer. Yeah,
like it's easier for people to pay attention. When a driver is riding down the road and they see 10 people, it's usually they, in my experience, they slow down and they see it more than one. And it raises
their awareness too. So even if there are riders strung out in front of that group, now we're on their radar.
Yep. And the other thing, let's say you ignore that. The other one that I see all the time is you're going on a road, a car passes in front of you
for a right turn,
and then immediately does a right turn, like they're trying to kill you. Yeah. And so many people we see, even professional athletes. Jordan Rapp had this.
Keegan Swenson just had it last week.
Yep. Matthew, the triathlete.
Oh, Matt Russell.
Matt Russell. He had this, but it was in a race actually too. Yeah. But I think that just be aware. Like no Strava segment's worth it, no interval's worth it. Just pretend that they're going to turn in front of you. If there's a spot for them to turn in front of you, they're going to do it. I've had some old people almost kill me that way. Yeah. They pulled right in front of me. I was going like 28 miles per hour, and it gets scary, right?
Yeah, you have to ride defensively. You have to imagine the worst in each scenario just so you're prepared for it.
Oh, yeah.
And it's triathletes too. You're in your aero bars, and those cars come by. It's even more. It's like twice the distance of stopping time because you have to get up and hit your brakes, and then usually the TT bikes don't brake as well as like a disc road bike or something.
Not.
Yeah, they don't at all, right? No. So I just want to say, for when you do ride outside, those two things: pretend people are going to be in front of you, and just stay off those
sketchy sections of road.
Yeah, exactly. There's probably better road, and if not, there's always TrainerRoad.
True story.
Yeah.
Yep.
And trails.
That's
mountain biking.
Yeah.
As long as you're not doing something crazy, it's very unlikely, at least that I've seen, for people to actually die. Like they have to be doing crazy stuff.
Yeah. Rare. Yeah.
Broken collarbones and stuff happens, but that's not so bad.
Yeah. Little scuffs on the knee.
It's usually their mistake, not somebody else's.
Yep, exactly right.
Or it's hard if you're going down at 10 miles per hour, like you're not being a crazy person. It's hard to hurt yourself.
Yeah, really.
Seriously.
Yep. All right, let's get into Jennifer's question. She says, I get really bad hot feet on rides over about 90 minutes. Sometimes it feels like walking on hot coals. We should cover what this is. She isn't actually talking about the temperature necessarily of her feet.
Talking about hot spots.
Yeah, so the more like pressure points, right?
Yeah, exactly that.
She says, it's mostly my left foot, but sometimes my right on longer rides. I know it's time to replace my shoes and pedals, both of which are quite old, which is at least partly the cause, but it could be other issues. I'm afraid to spend a lot of money on shoes and pedals to find out that it was something else. So Chad, and actually you too, Nate, you guys mentioned that you both actually had this. Was it lost and found?
Prior to cramping, this was my most distracting, not injury, just annoyance. And I actually had some guy roll by me who was talking to his friend who was asking him how he was doing. He's like, I'm fine, but man, my feet are killing me. And I was thinking the very same thing at the same time. And then I saw you at the aid station, and that was what was weighing most heavily on me, is that just really hot spots on the feet. I mean, and you can expect it. I don't know how you would avoid it over the course of a 60, 70, 5, 6, 7 hours of pushing on the very same spot over and over again. I honestly think it's just a matter of time, but you can probably postpone it with better fitting footwear.
I used to get them, and now I can't remember the last time I got hot spots. So, and I think that a couple things come with it, and this is interesting because in your case, your guys' case, it completely refutes this, but in many cases, a flexible shoe will cause this, and a stiff shoe will remedy this. And that's basically just based around the theory that you have a cleat that's your pressure point, that's your contact point, and then your shoe flexes around that, so it puts a lot more of that pressure on one spot in your foot. Whereas if you have a stiff shoe, it balances that pressure out. And you guys are using the S-Works XC shoes.
Yeah, super stiff shoes, so they distribute that load pretty evenly. Well. But in my case, they don't fit as well as they could. I mean, I have high arches, and I know I don't have enough arch support, so my forefoot spreads and pushes up against the the bounds of the shoes. So I expect some discomfort when I don't have exactly the right shoe for my foot or the right insoles.
Yeah. I still get some hot spots every once in a while on the same generation S-Works shoes that you guys have. I don't have those for mountain biking. I have the previous generation, and those ones actually still, I think, fit my foot a little better. So a lot of it also does come down to finding the shoe that fits better.
I know. And it's tough, though. Like Jennifer said,
it's expensive.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Especially cycling shoes.
But we have had good experience with, I did this with my ski boots, and I'm about to do it with my cycling shoes, where I got custom-made orthotics. And they're not cheap, but they are transferable from shoe to shoe, and they are wondrous.
Yeah, do those wear down?
It takes a long time. So I have the same, and that's one of the, when I said that like they're gone, like I don't have the problems anymore. That's because I'm using custom insoles. So I go to Surefoot, so that's like a huge chain. They're all over North America and Europe, like in Italy and France as well. And they're usually at ski resort towns. They do have some like in Santa Monica and LA and stuff too.
It seems like most ski shops do cycling shoes as well.
Yeah. Most will say they'll do them. The only tricky thing is sometimes you'll get a ski boot fitter that doesn't understand the nature of the cycling shoe. Yeah. You have to bring your shoes in, but they don't understand the fact that, like, for example, when I do my Surefoot ones, I have to make sure that I bring in like the cycling insoles. So most cycling insoles, good ones, have something like in the specialized ones, they're a metatarsal button, which basically like if you're looking on video right now, but if you kind of make like a somewhat hollow cup with your hand or shallow cup, your foot actually has kind of a hollow in it, and it's in between the ball of your foot and then working outward to the pinky toe on the underside. And in a cycling shoe, since it's absolutely stiff and you're pushing on your toe, you kind of want to support there. And so there's little things that like they'll do slightly differently. The cool thing is if you do Surefoot, at least in my situation, when I go there, they actually cut out a specific little metatarsal button and they put that into the insole and they make it soft because it shouldn't be really hard. They make it soft. So they last, I know, once again, Keegan Swenson, he uses these things, and I think that he said he gets a couple years, maybe even 3 years out of these things. He just goes in every year and they take out the top little cover, the fabric cover. But it's like some sort of a composite material that they're made.
And he rides a lot, so.
He does a lot. Yeah. He did 26 hours last week.
That is a lot.
That was a lot.
And then a cheaper alternative to the Surefoot is something both Nate and I have used, which are super feet and insoles.
Yep, I've used those in hiking boots, and I just love them. But I've never used them in cycling shoes.
Yeah, they're always an improvement for me, but they're not. They don't work quite as well as the custom orthotics.
Jennifer, one thing I would say as far as trying to knock down the cost on this whole thing, which the costly part is usually buying and returning shoes if they don't work, or buying and selling shoes. Is if you can go to next time you're in the more major metropolitan area that has a lot of different bike shops, or if you do live in one, just go and try those shoes on and ask them if you can bring your bike and spin on a trainer for a bit. It doesn't have to be long, but ask the shops, because it's worth an ask. And you might find, I know you're not going to be able to spin for hours, but you might find instantly, okay, this shoe would not fit me well. So that'll help you at least kind of narrow it down.
And you can also adjust the tightness of your shoes too, because if you over cinch them, that can make those hot spots come on much, much quicker.
Well, that's what I want to talk about is my hot spot. It was more like,
or too loose for that matter.
Everywhere like an inch above my toes down just felt like it was on fire. And I am a toe pointer. And what I found, which I think it was, is I had the toe section of the strap was pretty tight, but the upper was pretty loose. So every time I pedaled, it was kind of jamming my foot into that one spot. And I was able to fix it during the ride by I loosen the toe, but then cinch up where the above my arch would be.
Yeah.
But the hard part is with the Specialized ones, on me, that BOA dial can really hurt.
So it pushes into the top of your
foot?
Yeah,
there's like a one little sensitive spot there, and they've moved it, and different shoes are better than what.
Yeah, it's not just the sole of the foot too. It can be the bridge. I mean, the top of the foot can suffer just as badly.
So you'll see a lot of brands position those BOA dials differently, and we all have differently shaped feet. So you have to find out which one.
But it still comes down to the same thing in all cases: is finding the proper fitting footwear.
Well, it's for Jennifer you to try is just a different tightness on the top of her shoes. Like try to make different spots tighter and different parts looser.
Yeah. So the shoes she has right now might actually be the ones that fit well. They're just not adjusted quite right.
One thing I would say with this too is on the retention system that you have. You know, if you have like BOA dials, or if you have straps
with that,
or laces.
For sure.
Yeah, and the beauty of a BOA dial is that it's so easy to adjust on the fly. The downside of it is that it has a round platform that is unflexible, and then two little straps that can cause some hot spots. Beauty of laces is that you can get something that's ideally dialed in perfectly, but then if your feet swell or shrink or anything else like that, then that's a total pain to change. Straps, honestly, like the cheapest shoes are Velcro straps, right? But I feel like straps.
I've had really good luck with
not
basic
always
3-strap system.
Yeah, not always.
Chad and I just got Giro super light shoes.
Yep.
Yeah.
What are they called? Pro Light or?
I think they're called the Pro Lights.
Yeah.
And straps on laces.
They have straps, Velcro straps on laces, super low profile. Yeah. And I find that I can get that tightness just right.
So can I. They've been the best fitting shoes out of the box that I've ever used.
Yeah, me too. And I also, I think my mountain bike shoes are a little bit too big. And I went down a size in the Giro, and it feels so much tighter, but I have not had any problems with any pain using that shoe for many hours.
And something I would say too is I thought that I have a really high arch, and then I thought that I needed a shoe with a wide forefoot, and I always, for cycling, I always did. And once I got proper insoles that really supported my foot.
Yeah, your forefoot won't spread as much when you support the arch.
Exactly. My forefoot doesn't flare out.
Yeah.
So I don't need a shoe with a really wide front end. So if you make sure that, and I know that like Specialized, for example, has different arch heights, which arch height is one thing, but when you're talking, I know this sounds like a custom insole commercial, but I don't get any cut from this. It's just arch height doesn't really cover it. Like your arch is differently shaped. It may, have a steeper rise to that arc in the beginning or a more gradual one, and then it come down. And if you're trying to hit the height right, but it's the wrong shape, it can cause so much discomfort. So you really have to find out what it is. And something I like about a company like Giro is that they don't build in actual an arch into the base of the shoe. They leave that up to the insole, and I think that Specialized has gone back to that for their S-Works 6 series. They actually tried to build in a little bit, and it was annoying because it ended up causing insoles to sit a little strangely. So.
Giro gives you different little Velcro parts you could put to raise your arch support. Yeah, which is nice.
Yep, absolutely. So yeah, those would be our tips. Cold water, I have found, does not help with hot spots. Ironically, right, with the name.
No, because it's not really a temperature thing. It's not.
It's really not. Yeah. No. Enrique says, I'm 56 years old and I've been training exclusively for full distance triathlon since 3 years ago. I'm recovering since April from a tibia injury that will only allow me to swim. Oh, that sounds painful. He says, I'll be ready to jump on the bike again and start training in mid-June. The problem is, because of the injury, I only have 9 weeks until my main event in Mont Tremblant. And I assume that actually, in this case, because Enrique submitted this question a while back, he's probably much closer. He says,
sorry, Enrique.
Just the same, we can all learn from your situation, Enrique. He says, I come from a very solid base from my last year's season. That's Ironman Canada and World Champs. And from the first 3 months of this year. How many weeks and which phases of the full distance training plans would you recommend me to follow? So I'm going to take a step back with this one. What we're really talking about with this is a common question that we get, which is how do I return to training from an injury, right? Yeah. And there, depending on the different scenarios, it can be a number of different options for you. But I think it's probably safest to kind of start off with prioritizing base conditioning, right?
Yeah, almost always, especially if it's a long distance or ultra distance. I mean, that's all you're going to do all day. You're not going to go out there and gas it from the start. You're not going to put in hard surges, not if you ride sensibly or run sensibly. You're doing base work over the course of these events. So if you're going to emphasize anything, that's it. And these are the fundamentals that we talked about last week that need to be in place anyway. So if you're crunched for time, regardless of your experience level, I would simply revisit base.
Yeah, it's something that I see a lot of people say, yeah, but the event's so close, so I want to specialize, and that's
yeah, but you're layering icing on a cake that's not baked yet, so to speak. So it's just doesn't make sense to do it out of order.
Gravy on no mashed potatoes.
That would
or
be
uncooked
terrible.
Potatoes. I don't know.
Yeah, don't just drink gravy.
But it's interesting. I mean, this is so common. This is why triathletes get good at swimming, because they usually incur some sort of running injury and it hobbles them, so they spend their time in the pool. So it's not the worst thing. I like that you've reprioritized and you're becoming, I hope, a better swimmer. But it's just the sad fact of the matter. Running is impactful and dangerous.
Yeah.
The other thing that I've experienced is you have to change all of your goals. Yeah. Right? You're very tempted to whatever that power goal is or that pace goal for the run.
Away.
Yeah, right. And it's hard to know what the new pacing goal is, because with an Ironman, you obviously have to pace. And pacing is part of I would say is one of the disciplines of the sport, is being able to pace correctly over 11, 12 hours or more, right up to 17. So just that idea of I would actually be playing it conservatively. I think when you look at most Ironman athletes, they are not finishing strong. They are hobbling in, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, which on an already injured leg just exacerbates the whole issue, or the potential for re-injury.
Yeah, you just have to set expectations, right? I mean, with these events and, you're a type A driven athlete, you have previous results you're going to compare yourself against. I get it. But you have to focus on what you can actually do right now and what's best for the long term.
And I think both Nate and I agree on this. Our one bit of advice to you, Enrique, would be to intersperse some walking.
Yep.
With your runs, whether you do it just, every mile on the mile, whether you do it at the aid stations, et cetera, it changes things drastically. You're not just taking tired muscles and running them down to the point where the joints suffer more and more. You're giving them little bits of recovery that actually revive the muscles and create a more supportive environment for those joints.
In many cases, walk run strategy like that will end up with a faster time than just trying to run through.
It happens, yeah.
It's too, you have to start walking before you need to.
Oh,
right?
Really good point.
Yep. Yeah. And I like it time based. So 5 minutes running, 30 seconds walking. 5 minutes running, 30 seconds walking. You see a lot of triathletes do that, especially if you've never, if you're not a 3-hour marathon runner, it's going to be needed.
It's not uncommon to see them do faster times running that way too.
Yeah. And something to add to that, I like the time approach rather than just going based off of feel, because you may not feel that it's that recuperative or anything else like that when you go through it, but I promise it will deliver an effect later on.
Yep.
It's worth it. It's like coasting when you're in the middle of a road race, right?
Seriously, think about doing a 40-minute interval set, but then now every 5 minutes take a 15-second break in that 40-minute interval set. Yeah. It's suddenly doable.
Pedal at 90% of your threshold for 40 straight minutes, or add little 15-second breaks every 5 minutes and see which goes more, which goes better for you. And you'll maintain the same level of productivity, actually a higher level of productivity, but you'll get the same training benefit from either.
Hal Higdon, famous running coach, his son ran a 2:30 marathon walking all the aid stations.
It's impressive.
Right? That's super impressive. Yeah, and I'm guessing I don't think anyone's running 2:30s in Ironmans nowadays. Right. But I'm just saying you can go really fast.
Yes.
So don't think that it's going to slow me down a bunch. And especially if you're coming back from an injury. I mean, I think for the age groupers, there's very few people who need to run the whole marathon without stopping. You have to be a legit high-end runner.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and be going for I bet you there's a lot of people, if we polled our Facebook group who are Kona qualifiers, who walked all the aid stations or did a walk-run strategy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm sure of it, right? And especially once you get to Kona, that tends to happen too. That's such a brutal course, see all,
so
like high finishing people.
Well, these are the best people in the world. They all Kona qualified, right?
Exactly.
Besides the lottery people, but at the high end, you see a lot of walk runners.
Oh yeah,
a lot.
Yeah,
I'd do it.
Yeah,
I would plan on it.
Yeah, it's not a sign of weakness. It's a strategy.
If Coach Chad is willing to walk run,
I'm just saying. Look at most of my sweet spot workouts. I do exactly this thing because it helps me maintain a higher level of productivity. Otherwise, I'd peter out probably 2/3 of the way through most of these workouts. But I can stretch them because I just don't grind myself down to that point.
Final point on this, he's got an injury, and when you do take that walk run approach, that'll allow you to hopefully maintain better form. And that's so huge.
Less damage on your. On your joints and bone.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Let's move into Eric's question. Well, he actually has 3 questions. They're all pretty good, so we'll go through them. He says, I love the podcast, guys. I've learned a ton over the past several months. 5 stars for sure. Thanks, man. And if you're wondering, that 5 stars thing, he doesn't. That's talking about ratings. I realize I say that without saying what it is sometimes. So you can go on to iTunes and give us a rating. If you don't feel like we deserve a 5-star rating, just let us know what we can do first to change that.
Even better than that, tell your friends how much you love TrainerRoad.
There we are. Perfect, right?
Yeah.
He says, I've been training with TrainerRoad since November. Raised my FTP from 150 to 230. Holy cow, that's big. He says I had an injury-filled build phase, which I'm going to restart to help get my fitness up further. So thanks for the product, for all that you do for the community. Happy to do it. He says, on to my 3 questions. Number 1, is this kind of training applicable to running? So he says specifically sweet spot-based work and or VO2 max workouts. Is this what runners do when they do speed work and long, slow miles? I would love to know if there are any corollaries between power-based cycling workouts and running workouts to get faster.
Yeah, so this type of work is applicable to endurance sports, period. We're training systems here. We're not training actual movements. I mean, we are too, but...
What do you mean by systems?
So energy systems.
Yeah.
So we're looking for aerobic energy delivery and, obviously some anaerobic as well, but we're trying to capitalize on the aerobic end of things. But the fact is you condition your body to be able to do this type of work for long periods of time is going to carry over to all sorts of different sports. There is a level of specificity that has to be addressed. Obviously, you're not going to be a top-end cyclist and then hop in a boat and be a top-end rower just like that. But the fact is you've got the engine, so you can, shape it from there.
So you're not necessarily saying that like running is like a perfect and 100% crossover to cycling, right?
No.
Or is it like a cross-training event? But the goals as far as what you're doing to the body,
Exactly. So we're trying to cultivate high-level aerobic fitness, and how you channel that, where you steer it, is up to you.
Case in point, there's the Jack Daniels VDOT system, very famous running coach, might be one of the most famous like pacing systems. So they do, instead of power, they do it based on pace. And you do a test, and then based on that, you have zones. And you go to the website, it's all free, you can type it in. And it is almost exactly like related to power zones, and how they don't have you in that like tempo zone. They have you endurance stuff or threshold and above, like 10K pace and above, which is right around threshold at 10K pace. The only thing that's different is running has a higher risk of injury. So where Chad could do sprints 3 times a week,
on a bike.
Yeah, on a bike. You're not probably doing that most of the time.
Yeah, I go out and do that on a run, my body's going to break.
Exactly.
Something's going to break.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's more...
the high intensity work on a bike is more like you can do
more
of it, right?
Yep. Yeah. And it usually
impact.
Depends on the level. If you're like a high collegiate level runner or something, you're doing a lot of high intensity. But I feel like that is self-selected, and the only way you make it there is to be able to have the body to be able to take lots of high intensity.
Yeah, I mean, look at the top, high intensity, runners in the world, like all the top sprinters and everything else that you see in the Olympics. They are insanely fit people, and they're very strong, right?
Yep.
I mean, they're building their bodies around being able to maintain intensity. That's the goal, right? That sort of work.
And the really short sprinters, they're jacked.
Yeah.
Maybe for multiple reasons of stuff what we see in the past.
Who knows?
But also there's like the 5 and 10K runners. They also have probably better body composition than age groupers do.
Yeah.
And they are much lighter. Yeah. So just 10 pounds less is insane amount of less tear on your body. So that's another reason why in general they'll have you do more like easy running than lots and lots of high intensity stuff. When the high intensity stuff might get you more fit, but it's just the likelihood of serious injury that takes you out for 3-6 months is much, much higher.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. His next question, he says, what are your thoughts on what's happening in the local cycling community? And I assume he's talking about locales throughout, not necessarily our local cycling community because he isn't from our region. He says, and increasing the participation rate in races. Running races are seeing a huge surge of popularity, but from my perspective, bike racing isn't, aside from gravel grinders. I'm in the Philly area, and there are a ton of races out here, but not as many participants as I would like or as I would think there should be. If you were in charge, how would you help breathe new life into the racing scene? This is kind of an appropriate question in some respects because we're getting more involved in our local racing scene.
Yeah, Nate has actually taken charge.
Yeah. I guess this is a good opportunity for us to talk about how to make local race series better, I guess.
I have a lot of thoughts on this.
Go ahead.
I would like to start a race series company.
Okay.
That is maybe my next chapter after TrainerRoad someday. I don't know. But one thing that I think, I'm going to go wild here for a second.
Cool.
I think, imagine another sport like basketball. And imagine if it was all 1v1. And there was always these great basketball players there. I would stop showing up because you'd always get beat. But basketball is fun, I think, because it's a team sport. And even if you don't score 35 points in a game, you can just do your job and have a ton of fun.
I'm tracking. I see where you're going.
I think that there should be short crits in the U.S. where the results are only team-based. Like results of a football game, basketball game, they don't say who the top players scored each one. It's like this team won or this team won.
Yeah.
And all the points, like if we had a TrainerRoad team, so if you do a crit, each spring would be worth points. You'd have different things that are worth points, and the overall is worth points. But it's just what team can score the most points. So put a lot of strategy in that, and it doesn't matter. Maybe you don't even have to win the race.
Yeah.
It's because right now I feel like it's a lot of individuals, and there'll be certain people that kind of win it all, and you have no chance to win.
And even if there is a team, you're not really racing as a team so much as racing in support of a rider or two.
Exactly. One rider gets on the podium, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't happen in other sports. It should be a team of stuff, and that would be so much more fun to have. Like you get a chance to win more, right? So imagine a crit where there's 4 or 5 teams, each with the same amount of people, and even you can do just like you do in basketball, pickup games, so people don't have a team.
It'd be fun to mix it up.
They've done races like this. I watched a couple last year, European races
that
flipped things on its head, and it's interesting.
It would be really fun to, I think, go there, and who cares if you have the same jersey as another person, but like you almost randomly assign teams every once in a while. That would be really fun to mix it up. You could pick things around,
just like basketball. Like each team captain picks people, and you just need bibs that are like different colored, so that numbers, so that you can tell who's on your team. You guys go talk about a strategy.
No, it's a paradigm shift, but it's merited because bike races are dying. Plain and simple, attendance is dying off. So it's time for something drastic.
Yeah, for gravel stuff, we see it's through the roof, right? And even for mountain bike,
but that
racing,
was a pretty drastic shift. That was something that brought on riders who aren't interested in criteriums and road races.
Look at mountain bike participation as far as, you have like things like the Epic Ride Series, you have all the junior mountain bike stuff, and collegiate racing's growing, even the whole thing. So it can grow, but road racing definitely, I feel like, needs an injection.
It should be a team sport. So that's one of my race series things is going to be a team sport and more camaraderie and social aspect. Number 2, get those race results out. Goodness gracious. I can't tell you the amount of races where they will post it. At the race, it'll be posted, but then 4 or 5 days later, it's on the website.
Yeah.
The best thing I've seen is a lot of sites will have it be live.
Yeah.
You can just throw it in a Dropbox folder, put a link up for everyone, and say, hey, it's all right here. You can get a bit.ly that you have that always links to your Dropbox folder.
The technology is there to make this a very simple, easy, quick process.
I know. I don't know why it takes so long to update your website with race results.
Along that same line is timing systems, right?
Yep.
And timing systems aren't as expensive as they used to be. You could even use some clever ways. I know, for example, Chad and I, we just stopped by in Salt Lake City one time when we were traveling, and we ended up picking up a race there. And it was a local Twilight series, and they had a timing chip system on there. Basically, the way that it worked, instead of having to pin a dumb number on you, I hate that so much. Instead of having to do a number, you just have a little placard And that placard you checked out at the beginning of the year like a library book, and then you checked it back in and you paid for it, and then you got a refund at the end of it, right? And that little placard had a little RFID chip, I assume, in there, and then you just put that on your bike. And they said, sure, put it on your seat post, or if you can't put it on your seat post, you can put it somewhere else. We do the scoring electronically, so it's all taken care of.
The other thing that I want is great timing system, but also give us more information. There's a local cross series in Sacramento that does great, and they give you splits for every lap that you do, and then and at the end, the results come out immediately. So as soon as they're actually on
Time Your Race. The people that do it, Time Your Race, I think is their name.
By the time it's printed out, it's already on the website. So it goes to the website first, then they print it from the website. Amazing,
awesome.
right?
Yeah.
But even in road races, like I would, it would be great to have splits. Like once you get to an intermediate section, how far is the break away? You know, give more information to people so that they can get more into the racing rather than just an overall. Triathlons, please, oh please, give me splits for my swim, my transitions, my bike, and my run.
Yeah.
And then give me breakdowns of how I scored in each one of those.
Yeah.
Because it's another interesting thing when you look at it and you go, my bike was fast, my run was fast versus the overall, but my swim was slow, or my transition is ranked, 150th out of 180. I need to work on that. And it's you're doing this anyways. You're like, look through it yourself, and you're like, where is this? But just do it automatically. Race officials, it's not that hard. Like
courses.
Agreed.
Let's talk about that really quick. On courses, they don't have to be anything too crazy. Many times, best racing happens on a simplified course, right? Like, I think a lot of people try to think that the course needs to be something out of this world. And if you have good racing dynamics, especially like we're talking about with like these team-based crits possibly, where it's changed up, you could race on a perfectly flat oval, and it is a great arena for that.
Exactly.
I think our best local racing happens on a perfectly flat oval.
Our most basic course, yeah.
Yep. And that's where the racing is the most dynamic and interesting.
You think of like, the game Go. It's just simple, right? But the strategy is insane. Yeah. So you can have simple stuff and insane strategy. And also, I think what I've seen is kind of a trend towards, at least in the off-road stuff, more technical. Even they say like cross-country is like...
Yeah, cross-country. They feel like the salvation for cross-country is to make it more terrifying right now.
Yeah, but that's not a way like...
It's very strange.
Let that be... enduro, right? Yeah. Have cross country be less technical, more open, or even this. I don't see this enough is where the A course could be technical, but the B and the C can be less technical, so that you can you have a better like entry path for new riders.
On the lines of mountain biking too. We just talked about how the course doesn't have to be anything special. With mountain biking, you have so many opportunities. It really does help. Like if you're talking like a local weekly series, make them simple. But when you're talking about bigger races, like I think that's the appeal of the Carson City off-road. You're riding above Lake Tahoe, one of the most beautiful lakes in the world, and then you go to a lake above Lake Tahoe and then a mountain above that lake. It's like one of the most stunning views, right? So make these, and something interesting that they're doing is they aren't necessarily aiming to make, like with Epic Rides, the people that do those races, they aren't making these like a really technical, nasty, gnarly. In fact, they don't even call it cross country. They call it back country because that's kind of like their focus. They just want you to have an amazing ride on the bike, more or less. So it's not like there are different priorities, especially with mountain biking, I think. One thing that I really enjoy, we had a local series, and unfortunately I don't think it's going to happen this year either. It didn't happen last year, but up at North Star, which is a really big resort up here, and bike park and everything else. But it's really nice amenities. So then if your family does come to those events, like, my wife can go shopping when she's there. She can go hiking when she's there. They can go to the pool. Like, there are fun things to do, which is really cool. And then afterward, the event promoters would always do award ceremonies, right? Like a pizza restaurant and pub, right? So everyone kind of had that social experience after the race. That was like one of the only races I've seen where people don't just rush off at the end, right? Everyone wanted to hang out afterward because it's a nice place to be.
Another thing I think for mountain bike, do short track stuff where again, for new people, they can see things multiple times, but also for spectators, it's fun.
Yeah.
And if you're combine that with the good splits, you can see like, am I fading? Am I pacing well? Elimination races would be fun.
Yeah.
Where the slowest, so what that does is you do short track, but then the slowest person each lap gets removed.
Totally.
You just keep removing and removing and see how long you can last.
Anytime you make it more spectator friendly, it's going to become more enticing to really anybody to put on races, to sponsor races, to attend races.
But the doing that elimination race is, so I know I'm not going to win an A race here locally, especially when Jonathan's there. But it's a win if I go from 8th to 7th like next time, right? Did I make it one extra place? Sure. That's fun. Another thing is, I think for road racing, and this is more for me, but I don't do the road races when there are 50 mile per hour downhills in a group. It's just scary for me, and it does not. You don't
need that extra risk.
Exactly.
Risk,
going up to 30, that's fun. That's plenty fast for me. But I would design courses where you don't have those. Like if there is a mistake or someone else makes a mistake, you might get seriously hurt or die, right? Like like that's. Organize them so it's like that.
We don't need those.
Yeah.
I think the final thing is take time. A lot of people I see get really excited with events and then they kind of fizzle out.
Yeah.
It takes time to build these things for sure.
Many years to build up a good event.
Yep. Yeah. Okay, and then
got all riled up.
I know. Yeah.
It's a hot button issue for you.
Question 3, and then I guess we'll have. I think we'll have time for one more question after that. But so it says number 3. You've mentioned that a short back pedal during a sweet spot interval can help keep the quality of that workout high while also providing a mental break to help get through it, like we were just talking about with the walk-run strategy and how you do it in the sweet spot intervals too, Chad. What other hacks can we use for workouts like VO2 max intervals, anaerobic sprint workouts like Spanish Needle, that's a workout on TrainerRoad, and over-unders? So I guess this is more like a coping hacks or ways to get through it.
Yeah, just a way to tailor things to maximize their productivity and not worry so much about abiding strictly by their structure. We don't have to get everything just right to derive the training benefit that we're after. So if you're clear on that, then how you alter it should be a little more obvious, I hope.
Sorry, one thing to add really quick is like a preface to this. It's your famous quote that people talk about all the time is...
Which one?
Fatigue. Gosh, which one, right? Fatigue is no excuse for bad form.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Yeah. And when we're talking about these ones that are really fatiguing, when you're talking about like repeats or anything else like that, you see people kind of slogging through something. And
yeah, just trying to get through it because they feel they have to, even though they're flying in the face of the actual purpose. So
you miss the boat sometimes.
Yeah, right? So it doesn't, I mean, it for like a 3-minute VO2 max interval, it's not going to be vastly more productive if you stretch 2 minutes and 45 seconds to 3 minutes, but fall apart in that last 15 seconds. And that 3 minutes, there's nothing magical that happens right at 3 minutes. We're looking to stress the system, do it repeatedly, and benefit from it. So just in the case of that interval in particular, maybe you trim it a little bit short. Maybe you pause the workout and take a little more recovery during the break. I mean, some of these things might influence some of the intended outcome of the workout, but it's not going to change it so much that you've wasted your time. You will, however, have wasted your time if, something that's supposed to be at 120% can't be performed anything over 110% because you're so tired and you're struggling. So just recognize when you've passed the point of productivity and figure out how you can tailor the workout. And it's really not that hard. Yeah. Just trim down the harder stuff. If it's something like Spanish Needle or the microburst where we're 15 on, 15 off, skip a 15 on one time and get back in there. But in any case, make the overall productivity of the workout or the set of intervals your highest concern.
One thing that I find, another Coach Chad workout text suggestion, during all the TrainerRoad workouts, there's workout text. Those that use TrainerRoad know it well. To start breathing early and often, rather than waiting until you're like, oh,
no, as obvious as it sounds. Yeah, and I cue that quite often because I would watch it in the bike classes. I would see people all pursed up and mouths are closed or they're super narrow, and I know they're not getting a lot of air because they're just tense looking at the workout. I have fallen victim to this very thing with the sprint workouts I'm doing right now. They're only 30 seconds, and I'll get 10 seconds into them before I start breathing. And it derails the interval, or the sprint. So now I start my huffing and puffing well before it, just establish the rhythm so it's there. I don't have to think about it, and I have much better sprints as a result.
Yeah. I love the idea of Chad instructing himself. Come on, Chad, breathe. Come on, Chad. Yeah. Because he knows he's not going to do it.
Yeah, he has Chad mode in the app where the workout text just disappears and it's just him. The downhill skiers do this, and downhill mountain bikers, downhill and enduro riders. You hear them in the start gate, and they are breathing. I'm not going to do it in the microphone right now, but they're powerfully exhaling and they're controlling their rhythm. And Fabian Burrell, I've mentioned this before on the podcast, but he's a legendary downhill and enduro racer, and you would hear him coming from so far down the trail. And it would be his breath, right? And he basically just had a rhythm that he would sustain from top to bottom, and he would try to stick with that. It's a powerful example of something that you can implement at a smaller scale. And I find that whenever I'm doing these workouts, if I'm remembering before I get into that set of intervals, when I'm actually in the rest interval, I'm controlling my breathing, making sure that it's being something that I'm focused on. I always, every single time without fail, will have a better set of intervals than if I go into it and I just think, I don't need to breathe hard right now.
Eric touches on an important point too, is that it provides a mental break. So even if you are focused on your breathing, maybe you get a little distracted, and in any case, something suffers because you simply can't focus as strongly as you had. So these little breaks do more than just revive systems physiologically. There's also a mental aspect to it, a psychological one, that can really impact the quality of the workout.
Is there anything else you do to cope with or get through hard sets or intervals?
Yeah, a lot of music.
Yeah. Music's great.
That's the biggest thing. I'm just starting to do more. This is a little side note, but it's interesting for other people. Recently I've gone down in performance from like my peak in January, and I talked to Chad about this, and he is lucky. He is nice enough. Hopefully he's giving me good advice. The TT is coming up. Yeah. But we discussed what I had done, and kind of leading up to my peak, I was coming right off cross season, so a bunch of intensity. Then I was doing a bunch of sweet spot work with mountain bike races, and where the mountain bike races were intense. I just looked at one it was like an hour and 20 minutes with 25 minutes above 400 watts. Yeah.
Wow.
So I was even though my TrainerRoad workouts were a sweet spot, I was sprinkling some hard stuff. Recently, it's all been sweet spot.
Total lack of intensity. Yeah.
Total lack of intensity. No time over or above threshold. And Chad said, "Well, there's your problem right there."
It's great base work, but it's about all it is.
Exactly. Yeah. So I've been adding that in, and I totally agree with what you said, Chad. Is workouts that are like on off, and sometimes you're brutal, and there'll be like 20 of those in a row. Yeah. But you skip one of those, and it feels like a 3-minute break. Yeah. It's crazy how fast your body will recharge that system.
It's pretty impressive.
One skip of it, rather than giving up.
Yeah, because your body
or just going to the point of failure and skipping the last half of the set of intervals.
Yeah, exactly. If you go too far, it's just like the walk-run, right? Yeah. Where you give up, and then you have to you just turn off the app because you're frustrated with it because you can't muster the energy to do the next interval.
Yeah, workout quality. Just whatever you can do that supports that aim. High workout quality.
Yep.
All right. I think the last question, and this is going to be a big one for us here. Last one is going to be Nathan's question. So he says, "Hi, TrainerRoad. Awesome podcast as always. My question is regarding form and just what this elusive thing is. This is sparked from my personal experiences, but also mainly from the recent antics in the Giro, where two contenders, Yates and Pinot, were in very good form, and then in the space of a few days, it fell off a cliff, while other contenders, namely Froome, had sporadic form, which then turned into amazing form. And lastly, other contenders like Fabio Aru, who were surely expecting good form, and for it not to be anywhere in sight." So he says, "I believe form is a relationship between fatigue and freshness, but how can the body seemingly flick a switch like that? Or is it just because pros tread such a fine line, for us mere mortals, I guess the line's a little more blurred between form, but I've definitely had periods, where over the last decade where I've felt amazing, and then others where I've trained and similar structure and timing, then only feel okay." So a discussion on form, I guess, is what he's asking for.
Yeah, and I actually use this question as more of an opportunity to steer away from talking about pro tour riders and more toward the rest of us and how it relates to training and overtraining.
Much more germane.
Yeah, exactly. So let's instead use this as an opportunity to discuss overtraining, because we've gotten this question a lot, and I don't think we've ever really dove into it to a point where we sufficiently covered it. So I'll talk about just the 3 stages of overtraining. I'll try to make it quickish,
cool.
but thorough. But before I get to the specifics of each stage, let's just talk about overtraining in general. It typically takes a few weeks for you to manifest symptoms. So a little bit of fatigue after a workout isn't cause for you to think, "Oh, I'm overtrained. I need to take some time off." We deal with fatigue on a routine basis. That's just the nature of what we do.
Yeah.
Excuse me. How long it takes to manifest, though, is conditioning dependent, in that if you're straight off the couch, you can overtrain or put yourself in a state of overtraining much more quickly than a seasoned professional rider who can handle a heck of a lot of stress. So it doesn't have to be 3 weeks of hitting it hard before you're officially into the overtraining waters. That can happen much sooner if you're deconditioned.
One thing I want to say too, we'll go into the stages of overtraining and how, it isn't even necessarily, a terrible thing to touch into the lower portions of it.
It's a necessary thing.
But I find a lot of athletes, the training's going great, and then they have a hard workout and they have a bad race, and then suddenly the question is like, am I overtraining?
Yeah, and it's a valid question.
Easy to question that. So I want you all to kind of like take a step back. And one thing, just like an anecdote, is I very rarely see an athlete that's really getting into the part of overtraining that's really actually detrimental.
No, we've talked before. You have to be pretty okay with suffering to push yourself to a point of actual overtraining syndrome.
So what signs, I guess, would you be looking for from overtraining?
Sure. So the more overt ones, and this is just overtraining in general. We're not going to get how far along the continuum you are. Just poor performance is an easy one. Fatigue, illness, weight loss, but not necessarily fat loss, low quality sleep, abnormal hunger, and that could be cravings for things. It can be a loss of appetite. So that it varies depending on how far you've pushed things. It can affect your menstrual cycle for women, obviously. Unusual muscle soreness. I mean, we always deal with muscle soreness, but when it's like it just sticks, it won't go away, you can't seem to do anything about it, or it's excessive, things like that are cause for concern. Altered moods, for sure. And then there's those are more overt. There are subtler things which can be as substantial as bone loss, as muscle loss. I mean, elevated hormone levels, things you can't necessarily see, but you can see their effects. And I basically just described those effects. But if you keep it really simple, there are 5 basics. You look at your mood, you look at your energy level, the quality of your sleep, the quality of your performance, and any illness. That's it. If those 5 things are out of whack, any one of those things can show you, I'm a little overreached. Any combination of those things is when you start to worry.
Yeah, because I mean, we're always kind of trying to find that balance point with all of those things.
You're always going to. They're not always going to be perfectly in line, but when a high combination of them, 2, 3, 4, all 5 of those things are out of whack, you're pushing to a point of underproductivity, or you're missing out on a lot of the benefit you're slaying yourself to achieve.
So, I mean, clearly not all fatigue is bad, right? Like we want to be able to dose the body with some work.
Exactly.
That will cause fatigue.
So this would be a good place to branch into, the types of overtraining. So we have functional overtraining, and then 2 forms of non-functional, which I'll get to in a minute. But functional overtraining it's been termed overreaching. So you probably heard that term a number of times, I'm sure. And that's training. That's what we do. We overtrain. We push ourselves to a point where our body isn't comfortable. We disrupt that homeostasis, ask it to do things that it's not accustomed to, recover, and then we get stronger. So functional overtraining or overreaching or just training is a necessary component of what we do.
This is like in part of a training plan where Sunday I'm more tired than Tuesday.
Yeah, so
Monday's my rest day.
That's it.
I get more strong.
Yep.
Or get stronger.
Yep. And the signs, any of those signs that I just discussed are going to be subtle. They're going to be there because your body's tired and it's trying to rebound from stress that you inflicted on it. So this is part and parcel. And it's simply dealt with. We have recovery days, we have recovery weeks, and then we alternate hard, easy days. So we try to maintain or manage that overreaching such that we never push ourselves into these latter stages, which we'll talk about next.
Do you guys find that after hard workouts you sleep worse?
Depends, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and this is another sign. Once your sleep starts to become disrupted, that's indications of things that aren't righting themselves maybe as quickly as they should.
For me,
elevated cortisol levels, elevated epinephrine, either way, just hormones and things that are in your bloodstream too high levels.
I always find that it's tricky to, like, if I do a workout, relatively soon before even like when we race at like 7 p.m., or 6:30 area, in the evening, and that race goes until around 8 o'clock. That's usually hard for me to sleep because the workout's so close, right? So there's one thing about the workout, being hard, the question of it being too hard or too much training, But then there's also, if you're the type of person that's doing the workout right before you go to bed or something like that, you can kind of expect to have some sort of...
Yeah, so if you had a sleep disruption because you're racing at 7 o'clock at night and you can't sleep at 9, that's not what I'm talking about.
I'm talking about like after Lost and Found, you're done by like 1 o'clock, but everyone jokes, you're going to sleep well tonight. I'm like, no, actually, I'm probably going to have night sweats and wake up like 15 times tonight and be super tired tomorrow.
Again, so I mean, when we just dial it back or look back to disrupting homeostasis, our body's natural balanced state, something like Lost and Found where we're out there for 6-7 hours in heat, working hard the whole time, not eating foods that are ideal for us, et cetera. You can't expect your body to just snap right back and soak in a night's sleep.
It was really hard. I was driving around in my truck and shooting photos. It's tragic. Yeah,
6 hours for some, 7 for others.
Oh, little zinger there, huh?
Yeah,
So I guess that's the functional stage of overreaching, right?
Yeah. So that's
like what we're actually looking for. That.
Yeah, I mean that's going to happen. It's necessary.
So where does it get to the point where it starts to become detrimental?
And that's the tough part of this is there's no finite spot. There is no switch. There's no I'm feeling good. I'm overreaching and I'm rebounding, and now you just have to you look at those same symptoms, and they just become a bit magnified, a bit exacerbated. So once you start to see any of those things decline further, and after your rest days, recovery days, your alternate workouts, alternate days of intensity, if things aren't rebounding, that's when you think, now maybe is time for a full recovery week, or now I maybe need to steer clear of high intensity training for a while.
And once again, that's the mood, energy, sleep, performance, illness. Those are the things you want to keep in.
Yep. And this is so it's broken down into two things, one being worse than the other. First, there's sympathetic overtraining, where your fight or flight system is ramped up at too high levels. It's staying there and it's not coming down. And symptoms of that are still, just a further decline in performance. This is commonly where you see that increased resting heart rate. Your heart rate's up and it just won't come down. Every morning it's 5-10 BPM higher than usual. Just general restlessness or overexcitability. So again, mood. And then, of course, the quality of your sleep suffers even further. Cortisol's up, stays up, and that's very disruptive when it comes to trying to turn things off at night.
So I guess, are there any more, on the subtle side of things? Do you just expect the same symptoms to just kind of get worse?
Things that you can't really measure. So, I mean, like I said, we can see the symptoms of it, but we don't know that we're experiencing some form of adrenal dysfunction and that our cortisol levels are actually high. We can only, theorize based on the fact that I'm fidgety, I can't sleep. I'm losing weight, but not losing fat, et cetera.
So this is really just like when you're starting to see like more of a pattern, I guess, in the decline in those 5 things, and this, rather than just like sporadic,
Exactly. Stuff. And this is time where if you are concerned, you can back off your training, or you can visit a physician, or you can do a salivary test. I don't know if I would recommend sending away for a salivary test. This is something that needs to be dealt with a little more closely to the actual event. And even blood work, so you can see what's going on in there. Have I pushed myself to a point where this is something I need to address more thoroughly, seriously?
Blood work is a vague term interpreted by many people.
But I mean, if you have a good sports physician, then they'll know what sort of blood work they need to run.
Yeah, I was referring to the blood work that's been done traditionally.
Okay, and then push that even further. So take this already non-functional form of overreaching or overtraining and push it further, and then you verge into parasympathetic. So your rest and relax system is on overdrive, because it's your body has just been pushed to the point where it's really fighting itself now, trying to tone things back down to restore that homeostasis. And this is where things get extreme. The neurological impacts, the hormonal impacts, all of those things that were subtle are less subtle. They're more overt. And obviously performance isn't taking place at a high level. So this is the spiral at the lower end of things. Yeah. And this is when that high resting heart rate becomes a low resting heart rate, a heart rate you simply can't elevate no matter how hard you try. Yeah. Should you branch into this, should you actually experience full-on overtraining syndrome, this is the long-term rebound. This can take 6 months, it can take 2 years, and over the course of that, you can't do a heck of a lot. Yeah. So should you go this far, I mean, this is where you absolutely need to be involving a physician and taking this very, very seriously.
Yeah, like you see this every once in a while with riders in the pro peloton that they have like a rise, and they try to, they may have like a great result or something like that. They try to maintain it, and they take some time off from racing, and then they come back and they're stronger. I've rarely seen people actually getting into like these sort of states where it gets really deep and it gets really difficult. It's pretty rare. You really have to push past a lot of really bad signs.
Most people just push to a point where they're continuously flat. They don't ever, they're already having a hard time, so they don't up their training demand. That when it gets dangerous is when you're on this downward trajectory and you increase your training, or something else. Outside stressors are really flaring. You're not addressing your nutrition as well as you were, or maybe you never were. But either way, you're on the slippery slope and you're not fighting it at all. You're kind of giving into it.
It happens with pro triathletes because they have 3 sports, right? So it's just easy. Just
I can understand that perfectly.
I need to do more and more and more. Do 30 hours a week of 3 sports,
and that's that's like the knee-jerk reaction, right? I was really fit, and now my fitness is going away. I need to train more. When in fact you're overreached to the point where that's the last thing you need.
Yeah. So I guess let's talk about that. Some things that you could do, I guess. To
And this is going to depend on the severity of the overtraining state that you've reached.
Yeah.
But in general, more recovery, better sleep. And probably less work. And that might mean less work in general. It might just mean omitting your high intensity for a short while. So maybe you just tone things down and do an aerobic recovery block for a couple weeks and see how you respond.
Yeah.
The further you are down this whole path, obviously the more severe those improvements or repairs have to be.
I'd have to think that nutrition has to play a huge role too here. Like,
Hugely.
A lot of athletes get to the point, especially, cyclists are chasing power to weight constantly, right? So you get into a situation where you find something that's worked to be able to drop weight and you get stuck on that.
Yeah, so you're undernourishing.
Training ramps up, but then you haven't, changed the way that you're eating at all, and then you find yourself.
Yeah, and undernourishing is quite simply a form of overtraining.
Chad, can't having too low of body fat, especially the pro, affect this? Affects your hormones.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it just can. It's that simple.
Yeah.
You can have too low of BMI.
Yeah, and I would assume that if you're extremely fatigued, you'd be bringing in quite a lot of coffee, perhaps, right? Trying to get
and those stimulants don't always. I mean, in the case of when you've already taxed a system that is dealing with too much stimulus, and you're pouring more on top of it in the form of caffeine or whatever else, you can't really expect improvement.
Yeah, some of this stuff too, I guess, like you could be interpreting like overtraining, but like you said, the stresses that may be added into your life, it could be those too. Like you have to consider all the different circumstances because it may be a temporary effect from something like.
Absolutely. And it comes at you from all sides. So some of the more common ones are students dealing with finals. I mean, you're already under a heavy workload with the class load itself, but then it culminates in those finals where the stress ramps up further. And if during those times you maybe have a competition that lines up with it, and so you're stressing your body even more, that's absolutely, that combination can certainly lead to a non-functional form of overtraining. Just moving,
toddlers.
Yeah, traveling with kids in
just
general.
toddlers.
Toddlers in general.
Just kids. And then, of course, relationships and all the things that come with that. Whether you're in a tough spot, you just had a single fight, maybe you lost a loved one. I mean, all these things are forms of stress that can take a far greater toll than I think people give them credit.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like that was a good walkthrough on overtraining. When you look at the pro athletes and how they did it, I think a lot of it, what we saw was just, riders trying to time things differently.
Yeah, and they do. I mean, a lot of riders come into a grand tour, or they know they have to be fit for 3 weeks at a relatively low end or low level of fitness because they know they're going to gain fitness over the course of it. Yeah. And then others have top fitness at the start of it and they exploit it and then they end up petering out.
Yeah.
And then some just don't achieve it. For whatever reason, they can't reach it. Aru was the prime example, and he basically demolished my.
I feel like Yates
fantasy Giro possibilities.
Thanks, Aru. I feel like Yates sag climbed the Giro, not in his climbing, but in the sense that he just came in hot, and then and it was impressive, man, and it didn't end up working out, but. Froome, it looked like he timed it so that he knew that he was going to work his way into form and find it there. I'm not sure. I mean, when you're talking about the training that these guys are going into and doing all this, they need some serious time to recover after these grand tours. But I think that this is much more what you're viewing there is much more that balance of freshness and fitness and trying to find that spot.
Yeah, and it's hard to do. Like these are people with entire teams behind it to try to get it just right, and they're messing it up, right? Yeah. So give yourself some slack, and it's not. I mean, it's
even these guys get it wrong.
Yeah,
totally.
Exactly.
Yeah. And these guys have sports scientists behind them, like running numbers on all the data that they have. It happens, and also just because they can do it for 3 weeks, remember that the fact that they're doing the grand tours means that they are an absolutely exceptional human specimen, right? That they're able to do that. So, don't go hard on yourself because at the end of a 3-day stage race you feel fatigued. Welcome to that's all of us, right? That's how it works. So, I know I just remember after Single Track 6 how horrendous I felt.
I felt pretty good.
That one. You felt great
after 1 day of racing.
Yeah,
yeah, I felt pretty worked. So the final thing that I'm just going to say on this one is I'm going to wish Kendrick a belated happy birthday. That was a request from his wife.
Happy birthday, Kendrick.
Yep, absolutely. So thanks everybody for joining us. Remember, if you're on this with a live stream, just stick with us. We'll answer some of the questions that you've submitted now, and we'll go through all throughout the podcast. So stick with us and we'll answer those. If you aren't joining us on the live stream, you can do so next week. We're usually live Thursdays, and that's usually at 8 a.m. Pacific. If you're going to be at Carson City Off-Road, please join us. It's going to be Saturday at 4:30 p.m. at the main stage. It's going to be exciting stuff. And if you want some swag, hit us up there, and we'll give you a bottle, shirt, some stickers, some stuff like that. So we'll have it all with us. And with that, remember, you can go to TrainerRoad.com/podcast, submit your questions. If you like what we're doing, of course, or if you want to support us in any way, this obviously isn't like, we don't have a mattress company running ads on this or something like, or a food service company.
Not yet.
Yeah. Coming soon. No, joking. If you do want to support us, though, and you feel like this is something you get value from, go to TrainerRoad.com, check it out, and see if that's something that you're interested in, or share that with people that you do know who would be interested in that. We appreciate it. We'll talk to you all next week.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
All right. Live streamers. I'll take YouTube if you take Facebook. Sound good, Nate?
Okay. Someone said they like a bit of tart in my sweet, orange chews and sour apple science and sport gels.
Yeah, the science and sport gels, man. I'm using those. I guess we probably should have talked about that, like more like the nutrition plan, but I'm planning on taking in, for every hour, I'm going to take in gels, and then I'm going to take in 4 little blocks from Cliff Blocks. And then I also have
the science and sport gels.
Yeah, science and sport gels, then Cliff Blocks. Then I have a bottle on my bike, and that's the MAR10 stuff, and that's 99 grams of carbohydrate in a bottle. It's a lot.
That's awesome.
But I'll be sipping that bottle throughout the day. I'm going to bring an extra pack of it just in case I need to, fill up and I'm in Bonk City or something. And then in my reservoir, I'm going to have I'm just going to have Scratch hydration mix in there. So I'm not taking in any just normal water, and I can get over that. That's okay. It's a 4.5-hour race, and I really think it's going to be important to make sure that we stay on top of things. So.
You keep saying 4.5. I'm like, that would be nice. Chad, what are you going to do to prevent your cramps with nutrition? I mean, I know you might not be nutrition, but I just want to know your cramp plan and your hydration and your nutrition.
Well, I didn't have as muscularly a stressful week, so I'm already feeling pretty good about that. And honestly, I think that's enough, because I think I got my hydration last time. Well, not my hydration exactly, my sodium for sure pre-event and even during the event, but I didn't drink quite enough water over the course of it. So I won't be skipping aid stations, but it will be less of a concern because I'm going to have a pack on this time with some Osmo in it. So I have at least 70 ounces guaranteed on my body from the start.
Are you going to do preload salt again?
Honestly, I'm going to give that more thought. I don't know that it was necessary. I just, and it's going to be a cooler day, so I don't know if I'm going to be sweating even as profusely as I was at Lost and Found. Certainly not as much as we sweated last year when it was 15 degrees hotter.
Oh yeah,
and it's a shorter time too.
Yeah,
I'm also struggling if it's needed on this one.
I don't think it's needed as much.
I don't think so.
It's going to be cold, and not like cold, but during the morning when we start, we will have goosebumps and be shivery on the line because it's going to be in the low 50s.
Warmers, yeah. And
then by the time we get, the temperature is rising, but we're also rising into colder areas, higher elevation. So, I think that if you feel heat, it's going to be once you drop down from all of that, and after you go down a trail called Creek Trail and everything else, and you're basically at the bottom, we have a short little climb, short, like it's like a 2-minute climb, and that's probably where you'll feel heat. After, I really don't think that we'll feel it other than that. So.
I'm doing Scratch, and then Honey Stinger chews and Honey Stinger waffles. I like to do a bag of chews and a waffle every hour, and then around 2 bottles an hour.
Those chews have a nice tartness to them, don't they?
I do the pink lemonade.
Yeah, the pink lemonade's good.
Yeah,
I'm going back to UCAN. So UCAN in my bottle because what I've tried so far hasn't just my stomach won't tolerate sugar past a point. I just have an incessantly sick stomach for most of the event, which sucks a lot of the fun out of it.
And what is UCAN?
Super starch, so just slow metabolizing. It's not complex carbohydrate exactly, but it doesn't metabolize as quickly as sugar.
One thing that I didn't do at Lost and Found is I didn't take any pre-race caffeine pills. There's actually one from EFS called pre-race.
You said you felt better.
Well, after the race, Jonathan saw me, and I'm usually like feeling sick.
You were happy, like high-fiving people at the line, like you were good.
Yeah. So I think I will take some pre-race, and maybe I'll take a little tablet with like 200 milligram tablet with me, but I won't do as much caffeine as I have before. While you're riding, it makes you feel amazing, but as soon as you stop, you feel horrible. And then like 5 hours later, when we'd have to do the live podcast, that is when you just want to lay down in bed, and you just totally crash, and you're shaky and nauseous, and
it could be really bad.
I have a solution.
Ooh.
What's your solution?
Beer. I'm mostly kidding. Mostly kidding.
Downers. Get some uppers and get some downers.
That's it. Patrick asks, will TrainerRoad download outside rides off of a Wahoo Bolt? We pull them in from Strava or Garmin Connect. In this case, it would be Strava. Or if you're pushing a Garmin Connect, we pull it in from there. So yes. Let's see. Somebody says they're on Team Jonathan. They exist. That's good to know. There is one. Yep.
This is a good question. Why does training work, but racing all the time doesn't? Races are really hard efforts, right?
That's a good question.
Yeah, it's probably too hard. I mean, if it's not working, then it's probably too much stress. So, or maybe it's too little stress. Maybe it's the wrong kind of stress. It's not as structured. So you got to hope that you get out of your racing what is intended out of your training, and those two things don't often align really nicely.
The right mix of sweet spot, threshold, VO2 max, and anaerobic. It's kind of like what a lot of people get when they join TrainerRoad is they did group rides that all seemed hard, and then they did structured intervals, and then the group, like they're faster.
Oh yeah.
And that's what's not just all about pure like who can suffer the most. It's about who can structure their training the smartest and apply good mental fortitude to get through the hard training.
Yeah.
So. And two, another thing, I think that racing really hard and going those big efforts, because a lot of times they're not repeated. They're like all out. It might be one or two. Yeah. It takes energy from my mental bank.
Oh,
and
for sure.
Yeah, like I personally feel like I need a little bit time between races to be able to like recover from that and to be able to go deep again. I can't do it. We've been racing a lot recently. Up to 2 times, 3 times a week. Yeah. And that is
tonight.
It's taking a toll on me. Yeah.
It's a lot. It's hard.
Big toll.
One thing that you mentioned too, Chad, is like earlier, we're stressing energy systems, right? Or we're addressing energy systems, and if you take a more measured approach to it, you can get more precise or more sought after results. Like you can get to point, if you know A plus B equals C, you can get to C very easily rather than hoping by happenstance that it happens with your training.
I mean, with training, we're seeking specific training adaptation. With racing, you're after results or survival, but you can't really tailor the work you're doing to match the outcome you want. In terms of training response.
You need a mix, I think, an appropriate mix, like we say, blending in. If your goal is racing, you need to blend in those events, as you get closer. So this one's from Stubbsy. I like that name. He says, hi, guys. Do you have a particular TrainerRoad workout that if you can complete it, it's time to retest your FTP? I normally find that Elephant achieves that. So, in my mind, that's one of the beauties of the new ramp test is that you don't really have to go through a workout and pass or fail to see if it's okay. Ramp test is really easy to do, relatively speaking, in terms of time demand or in terms of training stress that it puts on you. Do that and then figure it out. It's easier than going through something that's like a really brutal, hard workout and maybe finding out you're not up to the task. So,
someone says, Chad, try Hot Shot. It will save you on cramping.
So
that. I just want to, when we did Levi's Gran Fondo, Hot Shot sponsored it. And this isn't, again, cramping is different for everybody. I don't think it's a one thing. And Hot Shot might work great for you.
Yeah.
But just in Chad's experience, we went there and I saw him down 2 hot shots.
So first of all, you
it was at the base of the final climb.
Yeah.
So
you weren't cramping yet.
I hadn't cramped yet. No.
Yep.
I had little niggles, but nothing.
Yeah.
So you down 2 hot shots, then you put one in your jersey pocket, and then as soon as we started that final big climb,
somebody gave me one too. So I had 4 of these bad boys.
You had 4, and then you had another hot shot. I think you started to cramp, then you had another. She had 4 hot shots, and you cramped like. You cramped so bad. We were going so slow after that climb.
Then you were just dying that you gulped down all that stuff too.
Yeah.
didn't exactly feel that good.
No, the day got super tough from that point forward. It was already hard, and it was the last climb, and I knew if I'm going to cramp, it's going to happen here because it was a steep climb, and I don't think I was geared especially friendly.
You were the same as me.
Yeah. But I was.
You had plenty of gearing.
I think I was fading though. Either way, I wasn't looking forward to that climb, and I was banking on hot shots to save me.
Chad had harder gears than you.
Did he?
Yeah, I remember having to mash.
I thought you had a 32 in the back.
Nope. I did have harder gears because I looked at you so many times over the course of that ride.
He was so jealous of you.
Jealously,
You got to be smart like me.
But in any case, I'm not. It's not a slam against hot shot at all. I mean, I understand what they're after. The whole transient, whatever the TRP channels.
Yeah.
And that sounds as good as any possible solution to cramping, but on that day it didn't help me.
It wasn't. Yeah.
Like we've talked about, there's so many different things that go into probably causing these cramps, and plenty of remedies. People are always like hot sauce, mustard, soy sauce, all these.
Yeah, I think in the case when your muscles are gone, they're just gone. There's not. I mean, no magic bullet's gonna.
Might distract you for a bit, but they can come back with a vengeance on you.
Yeah, my cramps are legit too. They don't play.
No, it's funny. I mean, it's not funny, but it's interesting to watch your legs. Because you can just see the ripples. It shakes and then it seizes. Yeah. Like it's like an earthquake.
I have to believe I'm exceptional in this respect. Because if other people did this, I don't think there would be so many endurance athletes out there.
Yeah. You're exceptional in a lot of ways, Chad.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Let's see. Robert asks, he wants to know, I described about releasing my own IT band. And I think now that we're on this, it's actually a good time for me to show. What to do. So can I use your microphone for a second, Jonathan?
Yeah.
And I'll put my leg up.
Yeah. Okay, sounds good. We should talk about my knee stuff. We can do that.
Oh, yeah, we need to do that too. Okay, so you should do this seated, and your IT band basically runs, I think you can see it, from like right here at your knee all the way up to your hip. And what you do is while you're seated, you put your leg out straight and to the side, like you have your hips really open. And the idea of that is you want to shorten this so that it gets really relaxed, your IT band. And then what I do is I take my fingers, like they're two hooks, and I put them underneath this quad muscle, and I pull up on it, and I'll feel like a little bit of pain right inside my muscle. And what I do then is I back off from where the pain point is, so there's just a teeny bit of pain or no pain, and I let it sit there for maybe 3-4 minutes at first. And then I'll feel it like it kind of ooze through my fingers. And then I move up a couple more inches and do it again. Then a couple more inches and do it again. And keep doing it back and forth until there's no pain. And I found that to be, switching mics, a great way to release my IT bands. Yeah. And I'll do that like stoplights in my car and do that. Again, we've talked about this before, but I found strengthening your glute medius really helps long term. But short term, when you have inflammation, I still do it. And I haven't had IT band problems in a long time. It's really helped.
Yeah. It doesn't. That has not helped for me.
Well, you don't have any IT band problems though.
Well, I've been told that I do. I've been told that I don't. You know what I mean? So
you just paid $2,000 and they said no.
Yeah. So one thing I just want to cover with this is like, knee injuries are a Pandora's box. Like when you dig deep into there, you're going to find a whole lot of, and depending on who you talk to, you're going to find a different solution, different problem, different everything else. And it's something that I've spent way too much money on over the past 4 years trying to figure out, and it's caused way too much of an interruption in my training and lots of other things. So I guess that we should put this on the podcast, so I'll end up describing this on a future episode. But I just went through and worked with, I feel like, an extremely well-qualified doctor on this, and I think I have a good path to getting back to it because it's still affecting me. So, and as far as like suggestions, I don't want to seem like closed off, but I think it's fair to say that at this point I've tried everything, because even that doctor that I spoke with who treats the best athletes in the world, his remark was, yeah, you've tried everything. So yeah, there's lots of things. Knee injuries are extremely tough to chase down. So
a couple of people mentioned that they've had success with Superfeet, custom-made insoles, Giro Tech Lace, and people like Boa Dial. So it just kind of shows you it's a little individual. Yeah.
Somebody's asking, won't the plugs or the tire plugs get dirt on them if they're exposed on your handlebars? They aren't like
tacky.
Yeah, they aren't like tacky like that. And even then, if it attracts some dirt, that's fine. It's not a problem. Mm-hmm. Like you could even like drop this thing in the dirt and then plug your tire with it. It's no problem at all. Mm-hmm. So if they get dirty, it's not a big deal. Not a big deal at all. People say they don't bond well to the rubber, and they still do. It's really, the tire plug doesn't bond. It just fills the hole. And then
so
the
the
sealant
sealant
is what bonds.
Sealant to adhere to, yeah.
Rob Yates says, maybe relation to the Yates brothers, I don't know. Most crit and cyclocross races in North Texas are now chip tying with live lap times and instant results online. Well, thanks, Rob.
It should be.
Thanks for rubbing it in.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the way.
We'll get there.
That's even better. Live. Running races do this where you can get it live.
It's way more engaging. Again, I mean, if you can increase the spectator value, that's...
Why isn't there leaderboards like at races to show like who's winning and by what time period and like the splits? You get that national championships.
Yeah, you get a little more involved.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not... It's a TV screen or probably a TV screen hooked to a computer that has a website that auto refreshes or something, or that has some live connection to it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I see this clear picture that we could do.
Let's make it happen.
I know.
Heck yeah.
There's more. There's too many things, guys.
Let's see. We'll do just a couple more. So Eco answers or asks a question, or Echo says, what do you think is the maximum watts per kilo you can get by just following the TrainerRoad plans? It doesn't necessarily work like that, I guess. The goal isn't necessarily, like, we don't make a plan that says this will elevate you to 4 watts per kilogram, right? And number one, it's different for every single person. But then on top of that, different people have different limits. And, watts per kilogram may not be necessarily your focus. If you're just doing, flat crits, flat TTs, you don't really care about watts per kilogram. Instead, you're caring more about your power to aerodynamic drag, right? Or, your tactics and everything else like that. So it's not really built like that. And for each person, that's going to be different where you can get with that limit. We've talked before about the limits that, I should say, categories that have been placed, brackets for watt kg that have been addressed or assigned to categories of racers, and that's a suggestion too, right? It's not an across the board thing. There are plenty of 5 watt per kilogram, little juniors that are still racing Cat 5 and Cat 4 and don't win because they don't have that part down. So, not the end goal. Like Chad said, we're addressing energy systems.
Jeff says, sorry, missed the beginning and just heard Nate mention night sweats. If you expanded on this earlier, I'll catch it when the full episode. Otherwise, I'm interested in knowing if they are prevalent with athletes or a reason for concern.
Just being wound up in terms of thermal regulation. I mean, you've been hot all day or you've done a ton of work and your body's still amped. You're still burning excess oxygen. I mean, it makes sense to go to bed in this wound up state and be hot and to wake up from it. It happens just about any night I work out in the evening. Certainly after a race like that. I think we did touch on night sweats a while back, and we had something that I'll have to revisit that we can maybe share on the next podcast that was kind of informative.
I know this is, so anecdotally, for me, it's very high correlation between the really big workouts, especially with weightlifting. And I know in weightlifting forums, people talk a lot about they get night sweats. But also, it's a good thing to talk to your doctor about because if you go on WebMD, night sweats are associated with almost every scary disease. It's like... you see it on weightlifting forums. People are like, I have night sweats. I see that's a symptom of HIV. Oh, my God. This is the N equals 1. Actually, N equals 2. Me and my wife both get it on she'll do a marathon, and then that night she'll have night sweats, even though it was 12 hours later, but she started to go to bed. And for me, the same thing, but it could be lots of things. So if it happens, I would rule out other stuff and make sure you're healthy before you listen to us and be like, oh yeah, I get them too. You're fine.
Another question, what should the week leading up to a race look like? Forgive me. That's all. That once again, tapering strategies are going to be somewhat individual. In most cases, what you like to see is like a reduction in training volume, but you don't necessarily drop that intensity off.
Yeah, it depends on the priority of the event too. So, and not always just that, as we found last week. I didn't prioritize a long event. I should have, at least in the sense that I needed a little more recovery coming into it, and I paid a price for it. So there's always that trial and error aspect of it. So some things I got wrong last week, I'm going to get right this week.
Another one, I was listening to Lionel Sanders talk about being able to produce 10 to 20 watts more outside than inside for the same perceived exertion. Is this true? Perhaps for Lionel, but it's going to be different for each person. And really, you can go on to blog.trainerroad.com. We have a winter training guide where we actually talk about kind of like the necessities that you would want to have around you. A very good ventilation is a good thing to have. And
considering the sort of power Lionel puts out, he needs 4 fans.
Yeah, he needs a lot of them.
Blasting him.
Yep, and because when you're moving outside, every single, every square inch of your body is moving through the air, right? But when you're not moving through that air, it's tougher for your body to make that evaporative cooling work. So that plus focus and familiarity and plenty of other things will all go into that. And I find actually that my power outside versus my power inside is hardly different at all. It was not that way when I started at all.
Me too.
There was a huge difference. So it changes over time. Then I'm going to throw in one more.
I got one good one too.
Cool. Go ahead. You
Quick.
First.
Jared Mickle says he sent into TrainerRoad a spreadsheet with like a top 2 cheat sheet for Carson City Epic.
Oh cool. Right
so you were going to make that.
Yeah.
But we need to find out.
Thanks, Jared.
We'll ask. Yeah, Jared. Awesome. Thank you.
Appreciate it, man. Yeah.
Very much.
Very good. This last one here is from Zach. He says, I'm getting ready for cross and skills, and they are a limiter. Or I'm getting ready for cross and skills are my limiter. Should I add a skills workout on top of a low volume plan, or substitute it for a workout in the mid volume plan? That really depends. I would prioritize the training side of things in terms of fitness. The skills work you can throw on, and in most cases, that skill isn't going to add on a whole lot of training stress.
Yeah, I wouldn't substitute it. I'd layer it on top of some other type of workout. Yep. So make it specific too. I mean, work on your skills in a way that allows you to focus on how well you're executing the skills, but also do it as you progress through the race season under more stress. Learn how to do it in a fatigue state.
Yep, absolutely.
Guys, I have something scary.
Uh-oh.
Dave says it's 8 weeks to Leadville.
Yeah, I know.
8 weeks?
Yeah, I know.
Oh, it seems like it's like 3 months away.
Yeah.
I guess that's just 2 months, but
it's going to be a hard day, guys.
8 weeks seems soon.
Yeah. Wow.
And we're not even to the 40K TT yet.
I
need to lose weight.
I got a time limit. I'm 6 hours and done.
I'm 185.
6 hours.
186.
I'm either setting a new course record or I'm out.
I need to do.
I like that.
I want to get down to 180, 6 pounds. I think that's reasonable in 8 weeks. 1 pound a week. You want to lose weight too?
Yeah. This morning I was 146.
What do you want to be?
I'd like to be 141.
Okay, so we're about the exact same. And I've been 180 very recently, January.
So I should just eat the same things as you, just less.
Yeah. This is a side. I know we're going to end this, but as I do it, I'll go on I'm going on a business or work trip next week. Mm-hmm. I go on trips and I come back 2 pounds heavier, and then I just stay those 2 pounds until the next trip, and then I come back 2 pounds heavier, right? Like I don't. Adding up. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I got to lose weight. That's for sure. So, all right.
I was going to say that.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody. Hope to see you at Carson City Off-Road this weekend. Please join us there. And if not, then we'll talk to you all next week. Have a good one.
Thanks again.
Bye-bye, everyone.